Chapter 1224. 2 hours later. In the first room of a certain inn, Yuan Yao sat on the bed with her clothes half undone. She was so embarrassed that she covered her face with one of her hands. Even though Ning Fan had helped her to dispel her drunkenness, she still went crazy after getting drunk. Only now did she really get rid of her drunkenness. She glanced at Ning Fan with a complicated expression. His clothes were also disheveled. There were also a few rouge marks on his face. She kissed him without a doubt. As expected, wine is not a good thing. She would go crazy when she gets drunk. Her memory of that time was very chaotic, and she could not remember the specific details clearly. Yuan Yao checked a certain part of her body. After making sure that nothing had entered her body, she heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like she just kissed Ning Fan and did not proceed to the final step. Fortunately, that was the case. Otherwise, she would really be too ashamed to face Xiaoman. Why didn't you stop me when I was drunk? That's right. You're just a small life immortal realm, while I'm a life void immortal realm cultivator. How could you stop me? Yuan Yao said shamefully. I'm sorry. If my cultivation base is a little higher, I might be able to stop you. Ning Fan squeezed out a bitter smile. Of course, that bitter smile was fake. It was because he felt comfortable. At first, he wanted to tell Yuan Yao about his true cultivation base. However, after experiencing this incident, it seemed like he could not bring himself to do so. He clearly had the ability to quickly dispel Yuan Yao's drunkenness. However, when he saw her taking the initiative when she was drunk, he actually withdrew his magic power out of curiosity. He wished that Yuan Yao would continue to get drunk. With his cultivation base, he could easily push Yuan Yao away. However, why did he do that? How many years had he waited for this woman to take the initiative? Thus, he did not resist at all. In Yuan Yao's eyes, she thought that it was because Ning Fan's cultivation base was too low that he could not resist her life void immortal realm. Luckily, I only kissed you a few times. If I did something more immoral to you, I would really be too ashamed to face others. Yuan Yao said with relief. Yao you didn't just kiss me a few times. Ning Fan sighed pretentiously. His expression was very much like a victim who had been ravaged. Don't call me Yao. If others hear it, they will gossip again. Yuan Yao blushed and rolled her eyes at Ning Fan. Then she asked curiously, did I do other things to you? She really could not remember clearly. Ning Fan silently pulled the quilt away. Only then did Yuan Yao see that Ning Fan's undergarments had been torn to shreds by her. A certain little Ning Fan's body was filled with rouge marks. Didn't we not reach the final step? How could it be? Yuan Yao suffered a huge blow. Could it be that she took the initiative to help Ning Fan when she was drunk? If that's the case, how am I supposed to face Xiaoman? I tried to resist, but forget it. I don't blame you. After all, you and I have done more intimate things. This is nothing. Ning Fan lied without blushing. Not only did he not resist, he even pressed down on Yuan Yao's head, not letting her go, and forced her to do it for 2 hours. Something more intimate. Yuan Yao's face turned even redder. Ning Fan's words had awakened all the memories that she had deliberately tried not to think about. That's right. She and Ning Fan had been like this and that since a long time ago. But the problem is, things are different now. The current Ning Fan belongs to Xiaoman. I can't, Liu Bei, no. I should call you Ning Fan. What happened today is my fault. Fortunately, even though it has already happened, only you and I know about it. You and I must keep this a secret. In the future, we must abide by etiquette and don't let Xiaoman feel sad. Dong dong dong. Before Yuan Yao could finish her words, she was interrupted by a series of hurried knocks on the door. The one who knocked on the door was the innkeeper. She was a middle-aged woman. Although she was called the innkeeper, she could still be considered as an outer sect disciple of the Lost World Palace. In the past, before Yuan Yao became the palace lord, she had already received Yuan Yao's kindness. She had always wanted to repay Yuan Yao's kindness. Today, when Yuan Yao was in trouble, she wanted to cover up Yuan Yao's relationship without any hesitation. She even stopped addressing Yuan Yao as the palace lord. Instead, she called Yuan Yao by her immortal title in the past, Fairy Yao. Fairy Yao, this is bad. When the elders heard that you were having a tryst with a man in this place, they were clamoring outside the inn to arrest you. Quickly bring this little mister away from the reversed mountain, through the secret passage of the inn. Hide for a while, and don't let those people catch you on the spot. As long as they don't have any direct evidence, there is still room for negotiation. As for the matter of destroying the traces in the room, just leave it to me. Even if I die, I won't let anyone catch any evidence of your relationship. Rumble. Yuan Yao felt as if she had been struck by lightning. It was true that she was drunk. However, didn't she tell Ning Fan to bring her away, before she went crazy? How could Ning Fan be so stupid to continue staying in the reversed mountain, and even get a room in front of everyone? Even though the rooms in the inn on the reversed mountain were all isolated and outsiders would not be able to sense what was happening inside, anyone would be able to guess what had happened between her and Ning Fan after spending 2 hours in a drunken stupor, right? Could it be that they could discuss the Tao or play chess in the room? You were quite smart in the past. Why did you become so thoughtless after you ascended? You actually brought me to the inn. Yuan Yao was infuriated. She really did not know what to say to Ning Fan. Is there a problem with the inn? Ning Fan asked with a smile. It seems like you really don't know how serious this matter is. I'm a palace made of the Lost World Palace. A palace made cannot have too much contact with an outsider. Once this matter spreads, I will at most be punished a little, but your life will be in danger. Does your Lost World Palace even have such strict control over the palace maids? Ning Fan was surprised. Besides, since I already know about the matter between you and Xiaoman, I don't plan to have anything to do with you anymore. After all, I'm Xiaoman's elder sister. Ning Fan remained silent. No wonder he felt that there was some distance between him and Yuan Yao that was difficult to cross. So this was the problem. That's right. If he really wants to be together with Yuan Yao, he has to consider Xiaoman's feelings. Since ancient times, it was common for sisters to serve a husband together. However, it still depends on the wishes of the parties involved. Fortunately, Ning Fan understood Xiaoman's personality. With Xiaoman's lively personality, she might not necessarily be angry if she knows about this matter. Perhaps, she might even laugh at Yuan Yao. Fairy Yao, there's no more time. Let's talk about love later. Hurry up and run away with this little mister. Are you going to watch the elders capture this little mister and execute him? The innkeeper urged outside the door. Capture him and execute him. Yuan Yao's expression changed. Of course, she could not just watch Ning Fan being captured. The crime of sullying the palace lord of the Lost World Palace was enough for Ning Fan to die 100 times. Don't be afraid. Follow me. I'll bring you away. Yuan Yao tidied up her clothes. On the other side, Ning Fan had also dressed himself neatly. He was looking at her with a smile. There was not a hint of panic on his face. Yuan Yao, on the other hand, did not have the same leisurely mood as Ning Fan. She pulled Ning Fan and hurriedly went to the secret passage of the inn. Using the teleportation formation at the end of the passage, they secretly left the toppling mountain. In this way, the elders naturally came up empty-handed. They did not find any direct evidence that Yuan Yao had an affair with Ning Fan. Seeing that Yuan Yao had successfully escaped, the innkeeper heaved a sigh of relief and smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. After so many years, she finally repaid Fairy Yao and Fairy Yu's kindness in the past and settled the karma between them. Perhaps Fairy Yao had already forgotten about it. That year, when the two fairies came to the toppling mountain, they had once saved a young girl who was poisoned by alcohol and was about to die. That young girl was none other than her. Fairy Yao is so kind. Little mister must be a good person for her to be with you despite her reputation. Stone God, please bless this pair of ill-fated lovebirds. Next year, during the Stone God ritual in the palace, I will certainly burn a few more incense sticks for you. The innkeeper prayed sincerely. In a remote place on the western palace island, after a flash of spatial light, Yuan Yao and Ning Fan appeared. Seeing that they had successfully left the area of the toppling mountain, Yuan Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Ning Fan, on the other hand, wore an indifferent expression. Being caught having an affair and escaping through the secret passage are actually quite interesting to experience once in a while. Where are we going now? Do we want to go back to the toppling mountain for a drink? Ning Fan asked with a smile. If you want to go back, you can go back. No, you can't go back. Even though the Council of Elders did not obtain any solid evidence, many people still witnessed you carrying me into the inn. With the way the elders do things, even if they don't have any solid evidence, they will still capture you and interrogate you. They might even torture you to extract a confession from you. In the end, you won't be able to escape death. No, you have to leave the Sea of Time immediately. Once you are caught, even I might not be able to protect you. Yuan Yao said worriedly. I can't leave. I promised to be Xiaoman's chess soldier. I can't go back on my words. Ning Fan shook his head. You've already met Xiaoman? And you even became her chess soldier? Yuan Yao asked with surprise. Yes. Then where are you staying now? Xiaoman can't possibly arrange for you to stay in her residence, right? Is it inappropriate? Ning Fan asked with a smile. Of course it's inappropriate. Yuan Yao's phoenix-like eyes were filled with seriousness. She finally knew why the elders of the Western Palace summoned Xiaoman so urgently today. Perhaps those old fellows had already received the news, and they called Xiaoman over to question her in person. This is bad. Before she could think of a way to protect Ning Fan, Xiaoman had already been exposed on the other side. In that case, even if Ning Fan was not guilty of desecrating the palace lord of the Lost World Palace, he would not be able to escape death in the end. In the eyes of those old fellows, the crime of desecrating the fourth mistress of the Lost World Palace might be even more serious than that of desecrating the palace lord. After all, Xiaoman was engaged to the water sect. This won't do. Since the elders of the Western Palace have found out about this, they won't give you a chance to escape from the Sea of Time. It's impossible for you to leave now. You might be intercepted by the troops halfway. How about this? I'll hide you in a safe place on the island first. Then I'll go and plead for Xiaoman. There should still be room for negotiation. After all, those old fellows also don't want this matter to spread and anger the water sect. Yuan Yao patted her storage pouch and took out an exquisite palm-sized carriage from it. Then, she blew a breath of immortal qi into it. In the blink of an eye, the small carriage returned to its normal size. It was an immortal magpie carriage. The imprint on the carriage did not belong to Yuan Yao. Obviously, it belonged to someone else. Now that they were hiding in the dark, Yuan Yao was certainly not foolish enough to use her own immortal magpie carriage. The qi of this imprint is a little familiar. Ning Fan muttered to himself. Yuan Yao, on the other hand, did not plan to give Ning Fan any time to think. The two of them hid in the carriage and drove towards a certain place on the inner island. Not long after that, they arrived at the residence of the second mistress of the Lost World Palace, Bei Qinghan. They entered the residence through the small door without anyone noticing. After that, Yuan Yao took the liberty of hiding Ning Fan in Bei Qinghan's backyard and temporarily stayed there. After that, Yuan Yao left hurriedly and went straight to the Western Palace Elder's courtyard. Bei Qinghan, who was dressed in black robes, paced back and forth beside Ning Fan. She used a circular fan to cover her mouth and let out a strange smile. Ku, young man of the Slaughter Palace. Why didn't you stay in the Slaughter Palace? Why did you come to the Northern Heaven? It's fine that you came to the Northern Heaven. But why are you staying in my house instead of staying in Xiaoman's house? Could it be that you want something to happen between us? Ku, I haven't forgotten the rude crimes that you've committed. At that time I used the alias Kwang-san. You pinched my hand, dislocated my chin and played with my heart. You really don't know how to have tender feelings for the fairer sex. I also don't want to stay here. It's your elder sister who brought me here. Ning Fan casually glanced at Bei Qinghan and retracted his gaze as if he was looking at a stranger. In the past, during the disciple recruitment ceremony of the Slaughter Palace, he had indeed taught this woman a lesson. After all, she had bullied Bei Xiaoman many times. Naturally, he was protective of her and disliked her. Elder sister? Bei Qinghan was slightly surprised. Yuan Yao was clearly her mother. Why did Ning Fan call her elder sister? Could it be mother is not using her real identity in front of Ning Fan? But why does she need to cover it up? Speaking of which, when she returned from the eastern heaven and mentioned Ning Fan, her mother's expression was a little strange. Could it be, Cuckoo, this is really interesting. Since that's the case, let's make things more interesting. Bei Qinghan squinted her eyes and the smile on her face became wider. At this moment, Ning Fan was sitting on his seat and drinking a pot of spiritual tea. She suddenly sat beside Ning Fan and lifted her feet, which were covered in black silk stockings, to kick Ning Fan's leg. Ning Fan frowned. He already had Yuan Yao and Xiao Man. He did not want anything to happen between him and Bei Qinghan. Thus, he grabbed her ankle and stopped her from teasing him. I'll stay here temporarily and wait for your elder sister to come back. After all, I still have some things to ask her. You can leave now. Don't disturb my cultivation. Hey, this is my home. How dare you chase me out? Bei Qinghan refused to leave. Just when she was about to tease Ning Fan again, Ning Fan flicked his wrist and directly threw her out of the window by grabbing her ankle. He's too rude. He's too domineering. I really don't know what Xiaoman and her mother like about him. At the same time, Bei Xiaoman was being questioned respectfully by the elders in the Western Palace elders' courtyard. Yes, they were being respectful. Bei Xiaoman was not used to it. It was her first time being treated so politely by these elders. In the past, they would just order her around. I heard that there's an outsider in your residence. Is that true? An elder with a face full of scars deliberately squeezed out a kind smile and asked cautiously. Not good. These old things know that I'm keeping a handsome man. Bei Xiaoman was extremely nervous. She was a fool in love recently, but she was not an idiot. Naturally, she knew that there were some things that she could not admit even if she was beaten to death. No. How can I keep a Ning Fan in my residence? There's no such thing. I'm finished. I let it slip. Bei Xiaoman was deeply defeated by her own stupidity. Hiss. It's really Ning Fan. It's really Ning Fan. Am I right? All the elders in the Western Palace sucked in a cold breath. If Bei Xiaoman's handsome man was that lord, they would not dare to meddle in this matter even if they had 10 times more courage. The engagement with the Taoist of Water sect? He's just a Taoist of Water sect. He's not even the sect master of Water sect, true monarch Beihai. He's comparable to Zhao Jian, an ancient great cultivator. Zhao Jian, an ancient great cultivator, had smashed the entire Light clan into pieces when he was infuriated. How domineering and powerful was that? The foundation of the Lost World Palace was obviously not as good as the Light clan. Even if all the old ancestors in slumber were to wake up, they would certainly not be able to withstand Senior Zhao's wrath. No. I really don't have a handsome man. Who is Ning Fan? I don't know him. Wait. I didn't say the word handsome man. Bei Xiaoman was about to cry because of her own stupidity. The other party did not even mention the handsome man, but she said it herself. It's over. It's all over. Her stupidity might get Ning Fan killed. She had the engagement with Water sect. She was of great strategic importance to Northern Heaven. Even if she does something immoral, no one would do anything to her. However, Ning Fan was different. Ning Fan was just a little void refinement realm cultivator. He was a junior without any background in power. He might be thrown into a pig cage by the Lost World Palace and Water sect, and be skinned alive. Hiss. Handsome man. All the elders in the Western Palace were completely shocked. Could it be that their fourth mistress doesn't know about Senior Zhao's noble identity? How much courage does he need to have in order to keep an ancient great cultivator as his handsome man? Hold on. Fourth mistress doesn't know about this. Could it be that it's Senior Zhao's idea? Could it be that Senior Zhao has some kind of special hobby where he doesn't like his women knowing about his identity, and likes to keep his women as his handsome man? The few elders of the Western Palace communicated with each other using telepathy to exchange their opinions. In the end, all of them came to a consensus. They should just pretend that they don't know about Senior Zhao's existence, and deal with this matter coldly. If Senior Zhao doesn't want others to know about his identity, only an idiot would reveal his identity. Wouldn't that make Senior Zhao bear a grudge against them? Thus, the elders asked Bei Xiaoman about some trivial matters related to Ning Fan's daily life, and sent her away. Indeed, they sent her away. They sent her a few streets away from the entrance of the elder's courtyard. Bei Xiaoman was puzzled and secretly raised her guard. Something is wrong. There is definitely something wrong. The fact that she keeps a handsome man was clearly exposed. However, these elders were not angry at all. Instead, they treated her with unprecedented respect and politeness. There must be something wrong if something is wrong. Bei Xiaoman, who had been schemed against countless times, subconsciously thought that this was another one of her schemes. Yuan Yao hurried to the elder's courtyard of the Western Palace. To her surprise, she found out that Bei Xiaoman was not punished by the elders. She had been grounded for too long before this. Thus, she did not hear much about the rumors about the ancient great cultivator, Zhao Jian. Moreover, because she had too little authority, the secret court that was in charge of collecting intelligence did not tell her about the recent confidential information. Thus, she did not know that Ning Fan was the ancient great cultivator, Zhao Jian. She also could not understand why the elders of the Western Palace were looking at her with such a strange expression. Elders, may I know why you summoned Xiaoman so urgently just now? Please tell us. Yuan Yao asked. The few elders of the Western Palace wore awkward expressions. Not long after they sent Xiaoman away, they received another urgent message. It said that Yuan Yao was having a private meeting with a man outside the reverse mountain. Coincidentally, that man was also Senior Zhao. According to the eyewitness, Senior Zhao seemed to have used some kind of bewitching incense. After Yuan Yao fainted, he carried her into the inn for 2 whole hours. The dignified palace lord of the Lost World Palace was actually tainted by someone else. If this was not done by Senior Zhao but by someone else, they would certainly catch the culprit and cut him into pieces. Then, they would punish Yuan Yao, who had lost her chastity, severely. It was not impossible for them to request the old ancestors of the other palaces to abolish her palace lord. But now, would they dare to abolish Yuan Yao's palace lord? Would they dare to punish her? Would they dare to capture Senior Zhao and interrogate him? It was the Lost World Palace's honor that an ancient great cultivator had taken a fancy to a widow of the Lost World Palace, sacrificing a palace lord who had no value to them in exchange for forming a good relationship with an ancient great cultivator. No matter how they looked at it, the Lost World Palace had profited greatly. Of course, they could not let the entire world know about the matter of the palace lord of the Lost World Palace being raped. After all, the Lost World Palace was an orthodox sect. They needed to maintain their reputation. This matter must be handled in a low-key manner. It must be handled coldly, just like how they treated Bei Xiaoman. Is there anything that you can't tell me? Yuan Yao smiled bitterly and felt sad. She was the palace lord. Had she lost her power to such an extent that she did not even have the right to know what had happened in the West Palace Elder Hall? Palace lord, you've misunderstood us. We were just chatting with Fourth Lady. We didn't talk about anything important. If you don't believe us, you can ask Fourth Lady yourself. However, we have heard about what happened in the reverse mountain. Yuan Yao's expression changed. Just as she was about to explain, the few West Palace elders comforted her instead. Don't worry, Palace Lord. We will never believe such a ridiculous thing. We're sorry that you've suffered. Palace Lord, please consider the bigger picture and don't offend him. Even if he really has some unreasonable requests, please bear with it and agree to it. I heard that Lin Zhilong wants to propose to you? Don't worry, Palace Lord. We have already warned Lin Zhilong. No matter how bold he is, he won't dare to harass you anymore. Yuan Yao was puzzled. Did I suffer any grievances? What are these old men hinting at? What do they mean by consider the bigger picture? What do they mean by bear with it? Could it be the water sect knew about Xiaoman and exerted pressure on the Lost World Palace? Could it be that the water sect made some unreasonable requests to Xiaoman, causing her to suffer? That's why the elders hinted for her to bear with it. Are you really not going to tell me the truth? Yuan Yao's eyes were filled with anger. Her daughters were her reverse scale. She could no longer bear with it. The few West Palace elders looked at each other. Even a fool could tell that Yuan Yao did not know Senior Zhao's true identity. Since Senior Zhao purposely did not want to tell them, how would they dare to say anything? Were they tired of living? I understand. Goodbye. Yuan Yao left sorrowfully and went straight to Bei Xiaoman's residence. She must know the truth from Xiao Man. She must protect her Xiao Man. But soon, Yuan Yao was no longer sorrowful. When she arrived at Xiao Man's residence, she found out that the truth was completely different from what she had guessed. Xiao Man was not questioned by the West Palace elders at all. Instead, she was treated with unprecedented respect. When Bei Xiaoman told Yuan Yao all the questions that the West Palace elders had asked her, Yuan Yao fell into deep thought. She was not stupid. Those old men must have known about what she and Xiaoman had done. The problem was, why didn't they question her and her daughter? This was the key. It was as if those old men were afraid of something. That was why they did not dare to offend them. Could it be because of that matter? My wedding with the Taoist of the water sect is approaching. Is that why those old men are finally afraid? Bei Xiaoman guessed. That's the only possibility. But there are still many things that don't make sense. Yuan Yao frowned, but she could not think of any clues. It was not that she did not see Ning Fan's figure in her mind. However, she could not imagine the young and weak Ning Fan to be someone that the West Palace elders were afraid of. It seems like my marriage with the Taoist of the water sect is not without any benefits. At least, those old men are afraid of me. Bei Xiaoman pretended to be proud. Of course, her happy appearance was just an act for her mother to see. She knew that her mother had been worrying about her marriage recently. She had begged all the powerful experts in the northern heaven. Naturally, she did not want her mother to be troubled. Xiaoman, I'm sorry. Yuan Yao was her mother. How could she not tell whether Xiaoman was telling the truth or not? When she thought about the matter between her and Ning Fan, she felt that she owed Xiaoman even more. Just as she was at a loss of what to say, Xiaoman left her and started to look around the residence. No one knew what she was looking for. After searching for a long time, Xiaoman called the guards and said worriedly, "Where did my little Fan go?" "Who knows? Fourth Miss, please forgive us. We don't know. We tried to stop young Master Ning from leaving the residence, but he was too strong. We couldn't stop him." The few Void Fragmentation Realm guards said helplessly, "What should we do? I clearly told him not to leave the residence, but he insisted on leaving. If something goes wrong..." Bei Xiaoman became even more anxious. She wanted to go out and find Ning Fan. At this moment, Yuan Yao pulled her sleeve with a complicated expression. "Mother knows where he is. But you can't tell him where you went. I'm your mother." "Oh, all right. Mother, tell me quickly. Where is little Fan?" Even though Bei Xiaoman felt that something was wrong, she did not think too much about it. "He's at your second sister's house." "Not good. I told him not to go out of the residence, but he wouldn't listen to me. Now he's been captured by my second sister." Bei Xiaoman stomped her feet anxiously. Second sister Bei Qinghan loved to snatch her things since she was young. Could it be that she has her eyes on her man this time? "Mother, if you have something to do, just go and do it. I'm going to fight with my second sister." Bei Xiaoman took out a whip and rushed to Bei Qinghan's house without taking a carriage. Bing smiled and did not follow her. He would not interfere with the fight between the fourth Miss and the second Mississippi. After all, these two sisters were very close to each other. Even if they quarreled with each other, they would still be the best of sisters. If it wasn't because of their deep relationship, why would the second Miss give up the recognition of the Stone Warrior 8 formations and give such a precious opportunity to the fourth Miss? If it wasn't because of their deep relationship, how could the fourth young lady risk her life to rush in and save the second young lady when she was tricked by the Great Elder and mistakenly entered the Seamless Demon Cave? Bing, is there something that I didn't think of? I keep feeling that there's something that I've missed out on in this matter. Maybe there's a great danger approaching, but I'm not aware of it." Yuan Yao looked at Bei Xiaoman, who was leaving in a hurry, and said worriedly, "He, the palace master has indeed missed one person. Missed that heaven-defying immortal king. However, the palace master can rest assured. Not only is this person not dangerous, but he is also the palace master's family's lucky star. With him around, there will be a sky above the heads of the ladies. Heaven-defying immortal king? He shouldn't be this strong. How old is he? How long has it been since that year? Whether it is or not, Why don't you use your own eyes to confirm it? Okay, I will confirm it. Yuan Yao suddenly smiled. He was laughing out of anger. If Ning Fan is really some kind of heaven-defying immortal king, he definitely has the strength to stop her who is drunk. Could it be that this brat purposely pretended to be a pig and lured me to serve him with my tongue? This brat did not become stupid after ascending to the immortal world. He has obviously become more cunning and shameless than before. In Beiqing Han's residence, Ning Fan was meditating in his room, waiting for Yuan Yao to return. Suddenly, he heard a loud rumbling sound coming from outside the door. Accompanied by the loud noise were the voices of two young girls, who were arguing non-stop. Bei Xiaoman. Demon 7 Retreat 5. Beiqing Han. Spirit 6 Advance 1. Bei Xiaoman. Ghost 4 Advance 2. Beiqing Han. Immortal 5 Advance 4. It was actually the sound of Beiqing Han and Bei Xiaoman playing chess. Xiaoman is here to look for me? But why did she cause such a huge commotion? Ning Fan pushed the door open and went out. When he saw what was happening outside, he showed a rare look of surprise. Unknowingly, a perfectly good mansion had turned into a crisscrossing chessboard. Dark clouds covered the sky, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. There were barriers in all directions. As for the room where he was in seclusion, a black word spirit was engraved on it for some reason. The moment he walked out of the mansion, the black word spirit flew to his chest. Wait, isn't this the 6 games that I played with Bei Xiaoman? There were many types of 6 games, and there were also many ways to play it. The one that Bei Xiaoman taught him would be played with 6 chess pieces each. Divine, Devil, Demon, Immortal, Ghost, and Spirit. Among the 6 chess pieces, the Divine, Devil, Demon, Immortal, and Ghost were the pawns while the Spirit was the general. In order to win this game, one must eliminate the opponent's Spirit general at all costs. At this moment, Bei Xiaoman and Beiqing Han had turned the huge mansion into a chessboard. The former was in charge of the red chess pieces while the latter was in charge of the black chess pieces. Cuckoo, my foolish little sister. Do you know why you are so weak? It's because you don't hate enough. It's because you are weak that your little man is able to become my spirit general. Be angry and hate him. Then live on, and when you have the same intelligence and beauty as me, you can challenge me again. This was Beiqing Han's laughter after her Chinibu acted up. Damn it. That's my little Fan, my demon soldier, not your spiritual general at all. Give him back to me, or I will beat you up. Bei Xiaoman exploded in anger after being ridiculed by Huali. Beat me up? Cuckoo, don't talk nonsense so easily. That will only show your weakness. No one stands in the sky from the beginning, whether it is you or me, not even the chess god. However, the empty window of the throne in the sky is about to end. From now on, I will be the one standing at the top. Ah, although I don't understand what you are saying, I am still so angry. I want to beat you up. Bei Xiaoman, Demon 5 to 6. Beiqing Han, Immortal 4 to 5. Bei Xiaoman, Former Ghost 4 to Level 4. Beiqing Han, Ghost 8 to Level 6. Ning Fan was at a loss. Who could tell him what was happening right now? Unlike his blank expression, the guards in Beiqing Han's residence, and the guards that Bei Xiaoman brought were all praising the chessboard as if they were well versed in the art of chess. Amazing! This is too amazing! Fourth Miss move has the elegance of a chess Taoist. Second Miss move has the essence of the accumulated firewood old man. Unbelievable! Fourth Miss chess skills have obviously inherited Senior Gu Shiyan's style. This is the real hand of God. Second Miss move is unstoppable even if she is reborn after 100 years. Amazing! 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 Ning Fan let out a heavy sigh. How could a game of chess cause lightning and thunder to rumble? Who can tell him why? Could it be that the game he played with Bei Xiaoman was not the real 6 sets of Divine Devil chess, and this time was the real one? Speaking of which, do those clever guards really know how to play chess? Chapter 1225. The 6 Games of Gods and Devils was an ancient chess game with complicated rules. There were 6 types of chess pieces: Divine, Devil, Demon, Immortal, Ghost, and Spirit. There were 49 types of terrains on the chessboard. Mount, plain, river. Antelope, city, void. There were 24 types of astronomical phenomena on the chessboard. Rain, wind, drought, calamity, heavenly blessing, air tremor, meteor. This game involved the changes of heaven, earth, and man. As the game progressed, the number of chess pieces on both sides would decrease or increase due to special conditions. At the end of the game, the number of chess pieces on both sides would often exceed the initial number. Ning Fan understood all the rules. What he did not understand was why the game of chess would cause the sky to collapse and the earth to crack. Who could explain why the Western Palace Island would be flooded by the torrent that suddenly appeared? Who could explain why the Western Palace Island that was flooded by the flood turned into an ancient desert city in the blink of an eye? Who could explain why a chaos beast randomly spawned at the center of the chessboard and killed the chess pieces of both sides indiscriminately? Who could explain why the cultivators of the Western Palace did not react to such a huge commotion here? It was as if those people could not see what was happening here at all. As expected, everything I saw was an illusion created by the game of chess. Not everyone can see this illusion. The reason why I can see all of this is probably related to the spirit talisman on my body. Ning Fan closed his eyes thoughtfully. When he opened them again, the illusion of the sky collapsing and the earth splitting in front of him had disappeared. Heaven and earth had never collapsed. The two ladies did not treat the entire mansion or the entire Western Palace Island as a chessboard. As expected, they are all illusions. From the beginning to the end, Bei Xiaoman and Bei Qinghan had been sitting in the pavilion in the backyard. They were playing the 6 games with a strange 33-inch chessboard. Guards from both sides of the chessboard were chattering and praising them nonstop. I see. This is such a wonderful move. Amazing. It's so intense. I don't even have the time to blink. It's too heavy. Is this the real 6 games? Ning Fan did not pay attention to the discussions around him. He slowly walked towards the pavilion. His eyes flashed with green light as he stared at the strange chessboard. The moment he stared at the chessboard, thousands of shaman chants sounded from the chessboard and directly entered his mind. All of a sudden, the word spirit on Ning Fan's chest flashed with black light. His mind felt like it was going to leave his body, as if it was going to be sucked into the chessboard. Fortunately, he was completely on guard at this moment. With a calm heart, his mind was naturally easily protected, and he didn't get lost in the illusory world created by the chess game again. Even so, Ning Fan was still inwardly surprised. There were not many treasures in this world that could make him lose his composure. This strange chessboard seemed to be not as simple as it seemed. It wasn't the chessboard itself that was powerful. What was powerful was the ancient witch's voice inside the chessboard. This was Ning Fan's first time experiencing the real 6 games of God and Devil chess. The game he played with Bei Xiaoman was just an ordinary game of 6 bow, and it was a competition of their chess skills. It turned out that the real 6 gambles of gods and devil chess required one to enter the interior of the chessboard and kill each other. Bei Xiaoman had lost. She and Bei Qinghan had played 9 rounds in a row, but she had actually lost 8 of them. She had only won the last round, and there were even suspicions that Bei Qinghan had deliberately let her win. In any case, she had won a round, but Bei Xiaoman was not happy at all. Damn it! You let me win the last round. She could tell that Ning Fan's pride was deeply hurt. Kuh, I've already let you win the first 8 rounds. However, it seems like I didn't let you win the first 8 rounds. That's why I had to let you win the 9th round. My foolish little sister. You don't know anything about strength at all. Bei Qinghan covered her mouth with her fan and said with a strange smile. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Every single word you say is so despicable. Kuka, you've lost. So I'll accept your little fan without hesitation. And no, only little fan. Only little fan can't lose to you. Bei Xiaoman was so anxious that she almost burst into tears. Nothing can be gained without sacrifice. In order to gain something, you have to pay the same price. But Kuku, you can pay some price to exchange for this little man. Bei Qinghan gently lifted Bei Xiaoman's chin with her finger. Bei Xiaoman's face turned red. She angrily slapped away Bei Qinghan's perverted hand. What do you want? Bei Qinghan did not speak her mind directly. Instead, she whispered something into her ear. Upon hearing that, Bei Xiaoman immediately exploded with anger. Are you kidding me? How dare you ask me to be your personal servant? And for 3 days. Cuckoo, you have the right to refuse. If you're unwilling, I can give you some leeway and return your little man to you. Now it was Bei Xiaoman's turn to be unwilling. Fine, I'll be your servant. I don't need you to give me any leeway. Since it's mine, I'll take it back in a dignified manner. As a result, not only did Bei Xiaoman fail to take Ning Fan back, but she herself also fell into Bei Qinghan's hands and became her personal servant for 3 days. The so-called personal servant was not only responsible for the master's daily necessities, but also for warming the master's bed when necessary. Bei Qinghan loved cleanliness. Her only joy in life was to constantly dress herself up and bathe. As a personal servant, Bei Xiaoman had no choice but to serve her even when she was bathing. God knows why she was dragged into the water by her second sister while she was serving her. In the pond filled with flower petals, Bei Xiaoman angrily played with Bei Qinghan for a while. When she was tired, she directly fell asleep on Bei Qinghan's bed. She even asked Bei Qinghan to help her change her clothes. Only when Bei Xiaoman fell asleep did Bei Qinghan's teasing expression change to a rare doting look. She carefully folded the corner of the blanket for Bei Xiaoman. What an adorable sister. Bullying Xiaoman is indeed more fun than bullying Little Li. It turned out that Bei Qinghan was a perverted sister complex. From the beginning to the end, Ning Fan did not interfere with the two sisters' play. Seeing that both of them had fallen asleep, he withdrew his spirit sense and stopped probing them. In the past, during the disciple recruitment ceremony of the Slaughter Palace, he mistakenly thought that Bei Qinghan did not treat Xiaoman well. That was why he dealt a heavy blow to her. Now, however, he no longer thought that way. These two sisters were obviously very close and had a great relationship with each other. There was no need for him to protect his elder sister when she was teasing her younger sister. Ning Fan felt a trace of peace that he had not felt for a long time. As the moonlight shone into the house, Ning Fan pushed open the door and went out. He sat in the pavilion of the garden. For a moment, he did not feel that he was in the northern heaven. It was as if he was still in the rain world. His only regret was that Yuan Yao did not come back to look for him even after he waited until midnight. Could it be that she was avoiding him again? This woman. Could it be that only when she was drunk would she be willing to show her true feelings in front of him? If that's the case, then I'll get her drunk again the next time I see her. Since he had nothing to do, he took a ray of moonlight from the sky and used it as a lamp. With the help of the moonlight, he took out the fake Tao scripture and started reading it. From time to time he would take out the jade slips that omniscient old man gave him, and carefully study the supreme techniques of the Yin-Yang sect. With Ning Fan's experience, ordinary divine abilities were naturally not worthy of his attention. The only things that could catch his attention were the ultimate techniques of the two-form sect. Perhaps because omniscient old man's memory was incomplete, the jade slips that he gave Ning Fan did not record the complete techniques of the Yin-Yang sect. Most of the supreme techniques of the sect were missing. Only 3 of them were not forgotten by omniscient old man, but he could not remember all of them. This made Ning Fan feel a little regretful. He was not interested in ordinary techniques, but those heaven-defying techniques were an exception. That so-called 3 appearances of Cloud Dragon technique was actually a type of evasion technique. If one cultivates it to grand completion, he could even forcefully evade a full-powered attack from a Nirvana saint by relying on his protective cloud chi. It's too practical. The cloud technique that was included in the technique was something that Ning Fan was interested in recently. Unfortunately, this technique was missing and he could not cultivate it. That so-called 3 worlds fire origin technique was actually a technique to nurture fire. It could cultivate one's flame to the 3rd step. If Ning Fan could cultivate the 3rd step devil flame, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted in the illusory world? Unfortunately, he could not cultivate it because the cultivation technique was missing. There was also the 7 chi devil seed. Once he cultivates it, it could make the essence chi of an ancient devil cultivator 7 times more powerful. Once he cultivates it, his ancient devil mountain breaking strike would instantly become 7 times stronger. Also, there was the 9 revolutions mysterious art. On the day he cultivates it, His physical body would become a saint, and he would be immortal in the cycle of reincarnation. It could be said to be heaven-defying. Also, there was the immortal spirit sense. Just the name alone was enough to tell how heaven-defying it was. Initially, I thought that I already have a lot of heaven-defying techniques. I didn't expect that the Yin-Yang sect alone would have so many heaven-defying inheritances. As the ancestor of the Yin-Yang sect, how powerful would the Yin-Yang saint be when he was at his peak? It's really fascinating. Ning Fan sighed with emotion. He wished that he could be born in the same generation as the Yin-Yang saint and admire his glory. After sighing, he began to study the only 3 types of Yin and Yang secret arts. First was the Taiji life and death realm. With his comprehension ability, it was not difficult for him to comprehend this technique. The difficulty was that he did not have enough Yin and Yang qi to use this technique. Thus, he had no choice but to temporarily put it aside. Next was the Yin and Yang 4 symbols. Ning Fan suddenly realized that the Yin and Yang 4 symbols was actually the prerequisite of the Taiji life and death realm. As long as he successfully cultivates the Yin and Yang 4 symbols, it seemed like he would be able to obtain enough Yin and Yang qi. In order to achieve the initial stage of the Yin and Yang 4 symbols, he would need a large amount of immortal materials and medicinal herbs. Coincidentally, these were the things that omniscient old man had asked him to snatch. Those worthless things were actually useful? No wonder Senior Omniscient was behaving like a madman when I left the Earth Abyss, and asked me to bring all of those things with me. He even gave me some immortal materials and spiritual herbs. Ning Fan smiled. Could it be that Senior Omniscient had wanted to help him cultivate the Yin and Yang 4 symbols from the very beginning? I have misunderstood him. Before this, Ning Fan really thought that he was just fooling around when he went to challenge the sect. As long as he cultivates the Yin and Yang 4 symbols, he would have enough Yin and Yang qi to activate the Taiji life and death realm. The Taiji life realm could remove all the restrictions on one's body, while the Taiji death realm could make one immortal and live forever. The unity of life and death was the pinnacle of cultivation. It was the Taiji realm. The materials have been prepared. I can cultivate the Yin and Yang 4 symbols on my own. Even though this technique is incomplete, fortunately, the missing parts are not crucial. With my comprehension ability, I might be able to make up for the missing parts on my own. The only problem is that the Yin and Yang 4 symbols also has a prerequisite ability, Mixed 5 Elements Body. If he does not cultivate the Mixed 5 Elements Body, he would not be able to cultivate the Yin and Yang 4 symbols, let alone advance to the Taiji life and death realm. These 3 types of abilities were actually interconnected with each other. The relationship between them went from shallow to deep. In order to cultivate the Mixed 5 Elements Body, one would first need to cultivate the Minor 5 Elements Body, and then the Major 5 Elements Body. Eventually, the Major 5 Elements Body would advance to the next level and become the Mixed Elements Body. The direction of the Mixed Elements Body's advancement was not fixed. It was different for everyone. According to the introduction in the Jade Slip, the Mixed Elements Body that the Yin and Yang Saint Realm advanced in the past was called the Primal Magnetic Extreme Destruction Body. The Mixed Elements Body that the Omniscient Old Man advanced was called the Yin-Yang Illusionary Light Body. Not only was the name different, but the abilities of the Mixed Elements Body were also as different as heaven and earth. Coincidentally, Ning Fan also cultivated the Great 5 Elements Body. If his Great 5 Elements Body advances to the next level, it was unknown what kind of Mixed Elements Body he would get. The Mixed Elements Body should be able to increase my strength more or less. It's not completely useless. There was not much information about the Mixed Elements Body in the Jade Slip. Thus, Ning Fan was not clear about the specific strength of the Mixed Elements Body. Thus, he did not have high expectations for it. Considering that he needed to find a place of mixed elements in order to cultivate the Mixed Elements Body, Ning Fan had no choice but to take out the treasure-searching compass and locate all the places of Mixed Elements Body in northern heaven. Then, with a flash of his body, he quietly disappeared into the night sky of the Western Palace Island. How could the guards in Beiqing Han's residence have the ability to sense Ning Fan's whereabouts? Naturally, they did not know that Ning Fan had actually left quietly. The bright moon shines above the sea. Even the ends of the earth share this moment. It was a poem that was widely circulated in northern heaven. It described the beautiful scenery of the vast cold palace in northern heaven. The vast cold palace was an ancient sect. However, it had already declined a long time ago. It no longer had its former glory. In ancient times, the Moon Palace had given birth to an immortal emperor powerhouse and had a close relationship with the ancient heavenly court. However, after the ancient heavenly court was destroyed, the Moon Palace's immortal emperor powerhouse disappeared. After that, no more immortal emperors were born in the Moon Palace. Each generation, there were only 10,000 ancient monsters presiding over it. In this generation, there was only a second tribulation immortal venerable left to oversee the Moon Palace. Of course, if the ancient cultivators in the heaven-avoiding coffin were included, the Moon Palace was still a force that could not be underestimated. In the Moon Palace, there was a moon ancestor soul spring that was especially famous. It was the most restricted area of the Moon Palace. No one knew how deep the moon ancestral spirit spring was. Since ancient times, none of the moon cultivators who went down to the bottom of the spring came back up. All of them died inside. There was also a certain northern sky quasi-sage who was curious about the moon ancestral soul springs and wanted to explore it. However, that quasi-sage didn't even reach the bottom of the spring and escaped. At that time, the quasi-sage's physical body was destroyed, and only his primordial spirit managed to escape. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was curious about what kind of danger was hidden at the bottom of the spring for a dignified quasi-sage to escape in such a sorry state. Someone asked, but that quasi-sage didn't say anything. However, some people still felt the aura of primordial chaos from that quasi-sage's primordial spirit. Primordial chaos was the origin of primordial chaos. The origin of primordial chaos. The primordial chaos didn't come from nowhere. Instead, it was born from the tens of thousands of primordial chaos lands. At that time, some people concluded that the moon ancestral spirit spring of the Moon Palace was also a primordial chaos land. Moreover, it was the kind with extremely dense primordial chaos chi. It wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could set foot in. Since then, no madman dared to enter the moon ancestral spirit spring to explore. As time passed, more and more people forgot about the existence of the moon ancestral spirit spring. Only the elders of the Moon Palace knew that the moon ancestral spirit spring wasn't as simple as a primordial chaos lands. This wasn't just the beginning of the illusionary world's illusions. It was also a place where a supreme existence had placed his thoughts. June 1. The date of your return is uncertain. 10 years have passed since the moon rose into the autumn pond. Yet, you still shed tears under the bright moon. I regret not meeting you when the moon is high. These few sentences were recorded in the secret scrolls of the Moon Palace. It seemed like they were left behind by the founder of the Moon Palace. However, no one knew who the founder of the Moon Palace was. This was simply too strange. Ordinary sects would usually keep a portrait of their founder. However, the Moon Palace didn't do so. This also caused the descendants to be completely clueless about the founder of the Moon Palace. In the entire northern sky, no one knew who founded the Moon Palace. Tonight was the day that the Moon Palace preached under the moonlight. The Moon Palace was different from other sections. The elders would usually choose to preach during the night and not during the day. This was naturally because the disciples of the sect all cultivated the Tao of moonlight. Moonlight only existed at night. At this moment, thousands of female disciples of the Moon Palace sat on the ground in a circle. Sitting in the center was a blue-robed female cultivator. She was the cultivation imparting elder of the Moon Palace. People called her Fairy Hanwu. Fairy Hanwu had already been lecturing for 2 hours. After she finished imparting her Tao, all the female disciples had different expressions on their faces. Some looked happy, as if they had understood something. Some looked confused, as if they didn't understand what she was saying. Suddenly, a female disciple who looked like a little girl stood up and said timidly, "Disciple doesn't understand something. May I ask cultivation imparting elder to dispel my confusion?" "Don't be afraid. What is it that you don't understand? Just say it." A trace of a smile appeared on Fairy Hanwu's cold face. It was a smile that was not tainted by the mortal world. All the disciples of the Moon Palace cultivate the Tao of moonlight. However, until now, disciple still doesn't understand what the moon is. What is the moon? This question is very profound. It doesn't seem like something you can ask. Fairy Hanwu's beautiful eyes were slightly surprised. Then she nodded approvingly. She could see that the female disciple who asked the question was at the critical moment of breaking through the bottleneck of the void refinement realm. If the doubts in her heart could be solved, the void refinement realm would be just around the corner. You asked about the true void, right? No wonder you are confused. The world we live in has neither the sun nor the moon. Then where does the moonlight come from? What is the essence? The answer is actually in this moon ancestral soul spring. Your cultivation is still low, so you don't know. The moonlight in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds is actually emitted from this spring, and then projected into the whirling world. However, there is only moonlight in the soul spring. No one knows whether there is a real moon at the bottom of the spring, whether the moon really exists, whether the moon is real or fake, not to mention you, even I can't be sure. This is the true void. You can't see through the true void in this world. You can't verify everything. True void is only a thought in your heart. True void is only a thought. That female disciple's eyes were blank. She sat back on the ground. She vaguely understood, but there was still something she didn't understand. If she could understand it completely, she could truly break through the void refinement realm and reach the void glimpse realm. That female disciple had just sat down. Not long after, another female disciple who looked like a beautiful woman stood up. She bowed respectfully and asked, "Disciple also has something that I don't understand. Disciple also wants to ask, what is the moon?" This was a disciple who was on the verge of breaking through to the true crossing realm. She was the disciple with the highest cultivation among the disciples of the vast cold palace. Once she broke through to the true crossing realm, she would be qualified to become one of the elders of the vast cold palace. Although she also asked what was the moon, Fairy Cold Dance knew that this question was different from the previous one. You are also asking about the true void. However, the emphasis is not on the void but the truth. You don't have any doubts about the existence of the moon, but you can't outline the true appearance of the moon in your heart. In everyone's heart, there is a moon that belongs to them. That moon is something that is more important than life. That moon is your Tao. If you can't see the moonlight in the spring, it isn't because the moonlight is blurry, but because your heart is in a mess and the wind is stirring up the moon in the water. Tao seekers are born in the morning and die in the evening. Tao protectors are unafraid of death. What you lack is not Tao comprehension, but awareness. However, I heard that breaking through to the true crossing realm is dangerous, so I am a little afraid. Yes. I heard that crossing the true crossing realm is incomparably difficult. Among dozens of people, there might not even be one person who can succeed. Moreover, when stepping on the true bridge, if you make a mistake, you will. The female disciple said shamefully. Fairy Cold Dance smiled. It's normal for you to be afraid. It's just that you haven't found the person or thing that is worth entrusting your life to. When you find it, you won't be afraid anymore. For the time being, don't go into closed-door cultivation, and go out for a walk. Perhaps you will come across some fortuitous encounters that will change your state of mind. Disciple understands. The female disciple sat back on the ground thoughtfully. However, she immediately stood up in embarrassment. Can disciple take a look at Elder's moon? This? Fairy Cold Dance hesitated for a moment. In the end, she changed her true bridge. In the river under the bridge, there was a hazy moonlight. That moonlight was her Tao. In the past, that moonlight was very pure and had a hint of loneliness. However, ever since she went to the desolate land, there seemed to be something else in that moonlight. There seems to be a shadow in that moonlight. Who is that shadow? Could it be someone very important to Elder Hanwu? Is it a man or a woman? A female disciple with sharp eyes noticed something. Of course it's a woman. Hanwu's face turned slightly red. However, she hid her expression very well. She raised her hand and kept her true bridge. What? So it's a woman. What a disappointment. Some female disciples said disappointedly. Then, is there any man that's especially special in Elder Hanwu's heart? There were still some female disciples who were nosy and were unwilling to give up. They changed the topic. Fairy Cold Dance felt helpless. How was she supposed to answer them? There is indeed. Who is it? Elder has always been indifferent to men. Who exactly is it that you value so much? Tell me. Some of the young female disciples immediately began to chatter. Sure enough, to young girls of their age, talking about love was more interesting than comprehending the Tao. You guys. Fairy Cold Dance smiled bitterly. Perhaps she was attracted by these young girls. In front of her eyes, the figure of a young man in white robes appeared. In the past, it was that young man who saved her life in the chaos of the desolate land. However, he left in a huff. That young man claimed to be called Ning Fan. However, perhaps the great cultivator from the ancient times, Zhao Jian, was his real identity. What kind of person is that man? The female disciples asked one after another. He's a good person. Hehe. Then may I ask, Elder, which part of him is better? As expected, that part is better and bigger. Fairy Cold Dance did not know whether to laugh or cry. Could it be that she was really old, and could no longer keep up with the thoughts of these young girls? She actually could not understand what they were talking about. When she finally understood the meaning of their words, she blushed furiously. I don't have that kind of relationship with Senior Zhao. How could I possibly know whether that part of Senior Zhao's body is big or small? What are these little girls thinking in their heads? Could it be that it's not that his body is big but that he's living well? Tell us. Tell us. We want to hear it. Really. A female disciple who looked like a young girl was teasing the cultivation teaching elder of her sect. Suddenly, she was careless and the pouch on her waist fell into the moon ancestral soul spring. This unlucky young girl was called Fan Xiaoya. This was exactly what it meant by extreme joy turning to sorrow. That pouch was extremely important. It was the last thing her mother had left for her. How could it just fall? Moreover, it had to fall into the moon ancestral soul spring of all places. Now even a quasi-saint wouldn't dare to pick up something that fell into this place. She would never be able to get her pouch back. Wah! Heartbroken, the inexperienced Fan Xiaoya directly knelt by the lake and began to cry. Fairy Cold Dance really didn't know whether she should feel pity or find it funny. She was a dignified cultivator, but she couldn't even hold a pouch. She even knelt on the ground and cried. It really made people speechless. As expected, cultivators raised in a greenhouse had a weak personality. They were practically no different from mortal girls. All right. Don't cry. Just wait a little longer. Maybe that pouch will float up by itself. Fairy Cold Dance clearly wanted to scold her, but when the words reached her mouth, they actually became words of comfort. Moreover, she even made up a lie that even she herself didn't believe. Elder, you're lying. Fan Xiaoya sobbed a few times and said weakly. Although she had a weak personality, she was clearly not a fool. Anyway, don't cry. I'll find someone to help you retrieve your pouch next time. Don't cry so much. No, she couldn't make up anymore. She simply couldn't find someone more powerful than a quasi-saint who would risk his life to retrieve an ordinary pouch. Really. Fan Xiaoya was full of hope. Suddenly, the little girl thought of something and was overjoyed. She directly kowtowed to the moonlight. Yes, I can ask someone to help me retrieve my pouch. According to the legends, this moon ancestral soul spring is a place that even a quasi-saint wouldn't dare to set foot on easily. But if it's an ancient great cultivator, he should be able to set foot on it. If you can't decide on internal affairs, you can ask a senior. If you can't decide on external affairs, you can ask a true lord. Heaven, earth, Tao, the true lord, please show yourself. I beg you to help me retrieve my pouch. That is the only thing left to me by my mother. If you can do this, Xiaoya is willing to devote her life to you and will not cheat anyone. Silence. The surroundings were as quiet as death. All the disciples of the Moon Palace looked at this little girl as if she was retarded. It's over. This little girl is beyond saving. She must have heard too many stories about that ancient great cultivator, Senior Zhao. She was actually brainwashed into becoming one of Senior Zhao's followers. If worshipping the moon could get the help of that ancient great cultivator, then the people of the world would have already worshipped the moon until it was rotten. If offering her life to that ancient great cultivator could get help from that ancient great cultivator, then countless female cultivators in the North Heaven would be willing to throw themselves at him. How bored would an ancient great cultivator have to be to come and retrieve a little girl's pouch? Who is that person? Why is he standing on the surface of the moon ancestral soul spring, and not sinking? Suddenly, a sharp-eyed female disciple discovered something strange. Fan Xiaoya had just finished praying to the moon when a white-robed young man appeared out of thin air on the surface of the moon ancestral soul spring. No one knew how the white-robed young man was able to ignore the moon palace's protective formation and directly arrive here. When some of the female disciples who were also Zhao Jianying's followers took out the portrait from their storage pouches, they were pleasantly surprised. The person who came was actually Dao de True Lord, Senior Zhao. Heavens! Senior Zhao is actually so benevolent and righteous to such an extent. He actually heard the young girl's prayer. What does it mean by not doing good because it's a small matter? This is it. He is actually willing to travel across the starry sky, just for a small matter, like retrieving a pouch. What kind of kind-hearted and heartwarming act is this? It's Senior Zhao. He heard my call. He is actually willing to help me. Senior came here on the moon just to soothe the pain in my heart. So warm. So handsome. Fan Xiaoya instantly turned into a love-struck fool. More and more disciples of the Moon Palace joined the group of love-struck fools. They kowtowed to Ning Fan, who was standing on the surface of the moon ancestral soul spring, and exclaimed loudly, "He is a great cultivator from the ancient times. Besides, he is so handsome and so warm. It is not unreasonable for them to be love-struck." The only one who did not become a love-struck fool was Fairy Cold Dance. She stared at the surface of the water in disbelief. She had never thought that she would meet that selfless senior again in such a way at this time and place. For a moment, her eyes were slightly watery, but she was not aware of it. Ning. No, Senior Zhao. It turns out that you can really summon me when I pray sincerely. I actually never knew about it. If I knew this earlier, perhaps I would have already. Fairy Cold Dance, you misunderstood me. This is actually just a coincidence. Ning Fan felt extremely awkward. He just wanted to sneak into the forbidden area of the Moon Palace's soul spring during the night, and use the primordial chaos power in this place to complete his primordial chaos body. Unexpectedly, the female disciples of the Moon Palace did not sleep in the middle of the night. All of them gathered around the soul spring. As soon as he arrived at this place, he was already seen by a large group of people. Moreover, it seemed like there was some kind of strange misunderstanding. How could he not sleep in the middle of the night and go around helping others just to retrieve the pouch of a strange young lady? Do these young ladies really need to have such wild imaginations? There is no such kind person in the cultivation world. Even if there is, it is impossible for it to be him. Speaking of which, what is the Tao de True Sovereign that those people are talking about? Besides, the young lady who lost her pouch seemed to have a trace of qi which made him slightly dazed. This kind of feeling was similar to the time he met Si Yingyue, Su Manyue and Lin Qingyue, seeing that the cries of the young ladies were getting louder and louder, to the point that the entire Moon Palace was brightly lit. Ning Fan sighed softly, and did not continue to think about the strangeness of Fan Xiaoya. Recently he had been facing too many idiots. He was already too tired to explain himself every time. He really did not want to say anything more. Now was also not the time to talk. Therefore, even though he had met an old friend, it was not appropriate for him to chat with Fairy Han Wu. After giving her a slight nod, he directly dived into the moon ancestral soul spring, and hid for a peaceful time. He was going to be busy with his cultivation. It would not take too long for him to achieve the chaotic primordial body. He even planned to rush back to the Lost World Palace overnight after achieving the initial stage of the chaotic primordial body. However, the others did not know what he was thinking. Countless young ladies were so touched that they shed tears. Ask the world, how many legendary old monsters would respond to the humble request of a young lady? Senior Zhao was the only one. His reputation was well-deserved. Senior Zhao truly deserved the title of Tao de True Sovereign. Moon Ancestor, please protect Senior Zhao and keep him safe. Those female disciples who knew how terrifying the moon ancestral soul spring were knelt on the ground and prayed to the moonlight with sincerity, just to pray for Ningfan's safety. Ningfan was at a loss for words while sinking to the bottom of the spring. Is it because my luck is too good recently? Why is it that no matter where I go, people will sing about my good name? Everyone in the world is busy just for fame and fortune. I, on the other hand, can get both fame and fortune without doing anything. I should be happy about it, but why do I feel a little awkward deep inside my heart? Considering that this place was a land of chaotic primordial qi, which was rather dangerous, Ningfan did not let his imagination run wild anymore. He just swept away all the distracting thoughts in his mind and began to dive deeper into the moon ancestral soul spring. As he dived to a sufficient depth, the power of chaotic primordial qi finally began to appear in the water. If the power of chaotic primordial qi comes into direct contact with it, it would actually cause harm to the body. Even a body cultivator at the quasi-saint realm would not dare to directly absorb the power of chaotic primordial qi into his body. Fortunately, as soon as Ningfan used the cultivation method of the mixed 5 elements body, the power of chaotic primordial qi gushed into his body crazily. It did not cause him any harm at all. Instead, it had clearly become a great supplement for him. Ningfan's great 5 elements body had been stuck in a state of tranquility for many years. It was just like a tree that desperately needed nutrients. When it suddenly received the nourishment of the power of chaotic primordial qi, that indestructible bottleneck immediately loosened a little. However, it was just a little bit. This level of power of chaotic primordial qi was far from enough to satisfy the cultivation needs of the mixed 5 elements body. He must dive deeper and borrow more power of chaotic primordial qi to achieve a breakthrough. Chapter 1226. The so-called moon ancestor's soul spring was actually not spring water, but a pool of moonlight. Even though Ningfan had clearly jumped into the spring water, he did not feel that it was real at all. Only the moonlight around him flowed like water, not drenching his clothes. There were also fine traces of chaotic qi mixed in the moonlight, which did not disperse. In that unreachable place, there was an endless amount of moonlight at the bottom of the spring. It was the source of all the moonlight in the illusory world. Ningfan continued to descend at full speed. His speed was not to be underestimated. Even after descending for a distance of several hundred galaxies, he still felt that the bottom of the spring was unreachable. Clearly, the interior of this soul spring was a world of its own. Moreover, it was a vast and boundless world. Even with Ningfan's rain technique fully activated, he could not see the boundary of this world at all. Approximately 1 hour later, Ningfan stopped descending. His current position was already deep enough. The chaotic qi around him faintly exceeded his tolerance. Obviously, continuing to descend was not a wise choice. This is enough. Next, I just need to absorb enough chaotic qi to attain the initial stage of the 5 elements primordial chaos body. Ningfan sat cross-legged in the moonlight and circulated the 5 elements primordial chaos body. All of a sudden, countless traces of chaotic qi glowed and flowed into his body. If the cultivators of the yin-yang sect saw this scene, they would certainly be surprised by Ningfan's direct and violent actions. One should know that even the immortal emperors of the yin-yang sect had to be very careful when absorbing chaotic qi. How would ordinary cultivators dare to absorb so much chaotic qi like Ningfan? At this rate, I will be able to attain the initial stage of the Great 5 Elements Primordial Chaos Body in at most 2 hours and obtain the physique of the 5 Elements Primordial Chaos Body. This is just the beginning. I still need a lot of hard work to truly achieve the Great Perfection realm. Ningfan completely immersed himself in his cultivation, forgetting everything that was happening outside of his body. As his cultivation progressed, his body began to undergo various changes. Sometimes 3-chi magnetic light would spread out to protect his body. Sometimes, the supreme green light would turn into a green bird that hovered above his head. Sometimes, cold light would penetrate his body, as if he was going to turn into a block of ice. Sometimes, flames would burn his body, turning him into a ball of flames. In total, there were more than 400 different transformations on Ningfan's body. Each of the transformations represented a type of physique that he could choose from. It was not that Ning Fan could choose whatever he wanted. Among the 400-plus types of primordial chaos physiques, there were only 5 types of physiques that were compatible with him. It was not that he could not choose the other types, but they were not the most compatible with him. Therefore, it was very difficult for him to cultivate the physiques to the perfect perfection realm. Which of these 5 advancement paths should I choose? Ning Fan carefully sensed the differences between the 5 types of physiques he could choose from. The first physique was in line with his ancient Fey identity. When it was activated, the 5-colored Fey cloud would protect his body, and his defense was quite strong. Among them, the cloud art was something that he was interested in recently. The second physique seemed to be an offensive physique. When activated, one would be surrounded by primeval chaos lightning. Its destructive power was shocking, and could make a quasi-saint look askance. The third type of physique pursued extreme speed. It could allow a cultivator's body to turn into a spirit of heaven and earth and fly, increasing their speed by more than 2 times. The fourth physique was an extremely rare treasure-holding physique. Once it was cultivated, the power of the treasures would be greatly increased. Ning Fan was most interested in the 5th type of physique. It was actually a type of physique that was related to the divine spirit. When it was activated, Ning Fan could clearly feel the uneasiness and nervousness of the divine spirit power in his body. This kind of uneasiness did not mean that the 2 types of physiques could not coexist. At least, they were compatible, making it possible for him to cultivate the 5th type of physique. However, the dignified waste divine spirit physique was actually frightened by an unknown primordial chaos physique. It was Ning Fan's first time encountering such a situation. One should know that other than the waste divine spirit physique, Ning Fan also cultivated many other types of physiques, such as the Great 5 Elements physique, the Corpse Devil physique and the 6 Desires bone. However, none of the physiques could threaten the divine spirit physique. It was because their levels were different. In other words, the 5th type of physique was actually a powerful physique that was on par with the waste divine spirit physique. In just a few breaths' time, Ning Fan had already made his choice among the 5 paths of advancement. As he progressed, 5 clouds of clear chi began to circle around his body. 4 of them were dark while the other was bright. The 4 clouds of dim chi did not have any power. They were just empty shells, as if they still needed to be filled with something before they could possess power. The only cloud of clear chi that was bright was filled with the power of the ancient divine spirit. That was why it shone with boundless divine light. 2 hours later, the 5 clouds of clear chi completely condensed. This meant that Ning Fan's primordial chaos physique had completely advanced. Ning Fan heaved a sigh of relief and opened his eyes. He looked at the 5 clouds of clear chi that were floating around his body with an inexplicable feeling. The jade slip that Senior Omniscient gave me didn't record this primordial chaos physique. Could it be that no one in the Yin and Yang sect had ever cultivated this type of physique? 5 clouds of clear chi, 4 of them are dark while the other is bright. The dignified power of the ancient divine spirit is actually only fit to fill one of the clouds of clear chi. Could it be that the other 4 clouds of clear chi need to be filled with the power of the same level? A sentence from the fake Tao scripture suddenly appeared in Ning Fan's mind. The 5 spirits of heaven and earth are gods, devils, demons, immortals and ghosts. In front of his eyes, the game of chess that he could not win no matter how hard he tried appeared again. On the chessboard, the gods, devils, demons, immortals and ghosts of both sides were fighting against each other. I seem to have cultivated the most useless yet most terrifying primordial chaos physique. It's useless because only one of the 5 clouds of clear chi has been lit up so far. Only by lighting up more than 2 clouds of clear chi can the hidden ability of this physique be preliminarily activated. I only managed to cultivate the divine spirit physique under various coincidences. It's as difficult as ascending to the heavens for me to cultivate the other 4 spirits to light up the 2nd cloud of clear chi. But if there really comes a day when I succeed in cultivating this physique, perhaps I will become an existence that is even more terrifying than the ancient divine spirits. Ning Fan smiled, but he did not show too much expectation. He did not even know the name of the primordial chaos physique that he had cultivated. Then he might as well ask. Communication of all living things, activate. Like a lunatic, Ning Fan stretched out his palm and spoke to it. Primordial Chaos Physique, tell me your name. Genesis Primordial Spirit Physique, Genesis Primordial Spirit Physique, Genesis Primordial Spirit Physique. Genesis Primordial Spirit Physique? I've never heard of it before. But it sounds really powerful. Unfortunately, it's too difficult to cultivate it to the perfection realm. Gathering all 5 spirits' physiques is simply a fantasy. While Ning Fan was chatting with his palm, his eyes suddenly flickered and he stopped talking. At this moment, strange laughter suddenly resounded in the moonlight current around them. Hehehe. Teacher, look. There's an idiot over there who is chatting with his hand. Could it be that this idiot's brain has been damaged by the chaotic chi? Has he lost his mind? It seems like we don't need to do anything to expel him. He will be killed by the chaotic chi. Forget it. It's better for us to do something to expel him. After all, this is an important place of our clan. We can't let these rascals act rashly. Ning Fan frowned. When he first stepped into the bottom of the spring, he had already sensed the existence of some kind of special living being in this place. However, he did not take it to heart. His principle was that he would not attack unless he was attacked first. If the other party did not attack him, he would also ignore them. However, if the other party attacked him, he would not show them any mercy. Moon slash. A few illusory figures flashed across the current. Then several traces of immortal venerable realm sword chi slashed at Ning Fan. All of them were crescent-shaped sword rays. Those sword rays were not worth mentioning at all. However, what was strange was that those sword rays could actually absorb the endless chaotic chi in this place to strengthen themselves. With the support of the chaotic chi, the mere immortal venerable realm sword rays actually possessed the power of the immortal emperor realm sword rays. Even Ning Fan did not dare to underestimate his opponent. He summoned the reverse sea sword and swung it a few times, shattering all of those sword rays. This guy is really strong. We can't defeat him. Teacher, hurry up and do something. A few anxious voices sounded. All right. All of you stand down. Let me kill this bastard. Great Green Lotus Moonlight Slash. Sizzle. All of a sudden, Ning Fan heard the sound of thunder coming from the current around him. It sounded like the sharp chirping of 1,000 birds. Then, those sounds of thunder gathered into one and condensed into a green sword ray that was 1,000 zhang long. It was like a green moon in the sky. It was an immortal emperor realm sword ray. However, after absorbing the power of the chaotic chi in the surroundings, its power was forcibly increased to the first level of the quasi-saint realm. These underwater creatures aren't strong, but their sword techniques are just too terrifying. Ning Fan's brows furrowed. The frown on Ning Fan's face deepened. It was not because the quasi-saint sword light was too powerful. Instead, it was because there seemed to be a trace of chi within the sword light that he found familiar. The chi of the sword ancestor. The chi of Ji Qingling. Why do the sword techniques of these underwater creatures carry that woman's chi? Could it be related to that woman? Boom! Ning Fan raised his sword and blocked the quasi-saint sword ray. The coldness in his eyes faded a lot. He did not like these underwater creatures who ambushed him. However, if they were related to that woman, it was not impossible for him to let them off. What? This bastard is actually so strong. Even my Great Green Lotus sword technique can't do anything to him. Could it be that I have no choice but to ask the clan leader to kill him? The illusory figure of an old man who was dressed like a Confucian cultivator gradually materialized in the water. His face was filled with shock. Behind the old Confucian cultivator, a few young Confucian cultivators gradually appeared. Judging from the way they addressed him, they seemed to be his disciples. Be it the old Confucian cultivator or his disciples, none of them were alive. They were illusory sword spirits. They were not humans. They were sword spirits who had been guarding this place for generations. So they are sword spirits. Could they be her sword spirits? Ning Fan felt a pang of pain in his heart. In silence, he suddenly recalled the scene where the sword ancestor disappeared from his eyes. He also recalled the soul grass in the divine farmer's 100 herb garden that had yet to mature originally. He was not very interested in the moon ancestor's soul spring. Now he began to care about it. He wanted to see what the bottom of the moon ancestor's soul spring looked like. That woman, did she come here before and leave some traces here? Stop. I don't mean any harm to you. The proof is that if I really want to kill you, I just need to use an illusion technique. There is no need for me to compete with you in sword techniques. Ning Fan sighed. The shadow of the reincarnation tree appeared in his right eye, pulling the old Confucian cultivator and his disciples into the illusory world of an immemorial rainy night. This old Confucian cultivator was just an immortal emperor, while his disciples were just some sword spirits of immortal venerables. The reason why their sword techniques were powerful was only because of the sword techniques themselves and not because of themselves. With Ning Fan's current cultivation base, he could kill some sword spirits of immortal emperors and immortal venerables with just a glance using his illusion technique. The old Confucian cultivator was astonished. He was not an ordinary sword spirit. He was not afraid of illusions. However, he was still pulled into this place by Ning Fan's illusion technique. It was enough to show how amazing Ning Fan's attainment in illusion techniques was. Cold sweat involuntarily flowed down his face. However, he did not beg Ning Fan for mercy. Instead, he glared at Ning Fan arrogantly. I know that your illusion technique is powerful. Once you activate your killing intent, we will die instantly in your illusion technique. If you want to kill us, just do it. Don't talk too much. Someone will take revenge for me. Ning Fan was speechless. He clearly said that he did not mean any harm to these sword spirits. Could it be that they were deaf and couldn't understand him? Ning Fan shook his head and removed the illusion technique. The old Confucian cultivator was stunned. He could not figure out what Ning Fan was trying to do. What do you mean? Why don't you kill us? Are you really not here to hunt the sword spirits of the Green Lotus Sword? I feel like I've seen your chi somewhere before. When the old Confucian cultivator still wanted to ask more questions, a massive chi suddenly rushed towards him from the bottom of the spring. That was a quasi-saint. He was not a very powerful quasi-saint. He seemed to be a quasi-saint who had forcefully advanced through enlightenment. That was why his magic power was stuck at the bottleneck of the 10,000 tribulations, and could not advance any further for the rest of his life. If they were in the outside world, Ning Fan would not be afraid of such a quasi-saint. However, this was a chaotic place. That person probably also knew sword techniques that could absorb chaotic chi. Therefore, even though he was just a weakling among the first-grade quasi-saints, it was highly possible for him to produce a sword light with the power of a second-grade quasi-saint. Facing this person, Ning Fan had no choice but to be on full alert. If there was any disagreement, he would have to fight a tough battle. It's our clan leader. He actually left the Green Lotus seat and came to save us. The old Confucian cultivator was deeply moved. Every time their clan leader left the Green Lotus seat, he had to pay a huge price. Save you? You are not in any danger. Why should I save you so many times? I'm here to welcome a distinguished guest. A green light flashed and turned into a thin old man who carried 7 swords on his back. This person's cultivation base was not high, but his sword intent seemed to have reached an extremely high level. Once he unleashed his full power, there were almost no first-grade quasi-saints who could match him. Distinguished guest? Where is the distinguished guest? There is only one intruder here. The old Confucian cultivator was puzzled. The old man with 7 swords did not want to talk nonsense with him. The old man only looked at Ning Fan with probing eyes. He studied him very carefully, as if he wanted to peel off every trace of Ning Fan's chi and examine it carefully. After a long time, the old man seemed to have confirmed something. Finally, he smiled and cupped his fists at Ning Fan. How should I address you, fellow Taoist? Ning Fan. Ning Fan said indifferently. I am Taoist 9 Swords. I would like to invite you to my residence for a chat. I wonder if you would like to come? The old man smiled. Where is your residence? The bottom of the soul spring. I don't have the confidence to go to such a deep place. If I make a mistake, I'm afraid I will be erased by the primal chaos and be consigned to eternal damnation. Ning Fan said with a smile. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to lie. When you saw that we have a trace of the sword ancestor's chi, You obviously want to go to the bottom of the soul spring to see the inheritance of the sword ancestor. As for the primal chaos chi at the bottom of the soul spring, the primal chaos chi there is indeed so dense that even second-grade quasi-saints don't dare to go there recklessly. However, you don't seem to be an ordinary person. If you really want to go to the bottom of the soul spring, you might have a way to do it. Besides, even if you really can't do it, our Green Lotus Sword clan also has a secret method to help you do it. The old man said meaningfully. Since you have already said so much, it would seem hypocritical if I still refuse. It's not hypocritical. You and I have never met before. It's reasonable for us to be cautious. However, fellow Taoist, you don't have to worry. I definitely don't have any ill intentions when I invite you to my residence. Instead, I have something to ask of you. It's also an opportunity for you. Before you, there were 4 Northern Heaven quasi-saints who visited my clan. There were also 6 other quasi-saints who harbored ill intentions towards my clan. That was why they were expelled by my clan. Fellow Taoist is the 11th Northern Heaven quasi-saint who came here. This way, please. Hold on. Before we go to the bottom of the soul spring, I still have a question to ask. What is it? Feel free to ask. The old man was stunned for a moment. Then he regained his smile. Fellow Taoist's Tao name is 9 swords. Why do you only carry 7 swords on your back? Ning Fan asked meaningfully. It's a long story. In the past, we lost 2 of our swords in order to deal with the invading quasi-saints. Now we only have 7 swords left. It's hard to make up for it. The old man said with a sigh. I see. Ning Fan nodded, as if he agreed with the old man's explanation. However, deep inside his heart, he was a little wary of this old man. This person did not tell him the truth. With Ning Fan's eyesight, he could tell that the 9-sword sword technique that Taoist 9 swords practiced was actually 7 real swords and 2 illusory ones. From the very beginning, there were only 7 real swords. The other 2 were divine swords that did not manifest themselves during normal times. The 9 swords and 7 swords were related to the secret of this person's divine ability. It was normal for him to be unwilling to tell Ning Fan the truth. However, it was a little too much for him to deliberately make up a lie. This person was treating him hypocritically. Since he was not sincere, it was hard to say if he did not have other schemes. Well, it doesn't matter. Whether he is a friend or a foe, we will know once I make a trip to the bottom of the soul spring. Did Qingling really come here before? With Ning Fan's current state, it was extremely difficult for him to dive to the bottom of the soul spring while enduring the chaotic qi. Of course, if he activates his primordial true body and uses other techniques, he might be able to do it. However, Ning Fan did not reveal his techniques in front of Taoist 9 swords. Instead, he accepted the latter's help. The 2 of them continued to dive while chatting. Only then did Ning Fan learn that the Green Lotus Sword clan lived at the bottom of the Moon Ancestor's soul spring. This clan did not have a lot of members. There were less than 1,000 of them. Each of them was a sword spirit. Due to some reasons, the sword spirits of this clan could not leave the Moon Ancestor's soul spring. Once they leave the chaotic qi, they would die. Similarly, when they are in the primordial chaos, the power of their sword techniques would often far exceed their cultivation base. They were incomparably powerful. Once, those quasi-saints of the Northern Heaven who were plotting against this place were defeated. They were living beings who lived in the primordial chaos. To them, the chaotic qi was like water to fishes and air to mortals. It was harmless to them. However, an outsider like Ning Fan would not be able to do the same. He had to be very careful when entering the primordial chaos. In order to help Ning Fan dive to the bottom of the soul spring, Taoist 9 swords had no choice but to transfer a large amount of the sword spirit's power to Ning Fan to protect him. After diving for an unknown amount of time, an ethereal voice suddenly resounded in the water under the hazy moonlight. It was unknown where that voice came from, but it seemed to have merged with the moonlight. That voice was filled with endless longing. It was the voice of a woman. That voice sounded very familiar. It was clearly the voice of the sword ancestor. The only thing that disappointed Ning Fan was that the voice was not in the language that was commonly used in the cultivation world. Instead, it was a dialect of a certain place. Thus, he could not understand it very well. However, he could vaguely tell that it was a very sad ballad. The snowflakes of 7 Apricot City are flying. The person I am waiting for is wandering. Who is this song under the moon for? I woke up from a dream in the middle of the night. My tears dyed the candlelight red. Butterflies fly quickly to the faraway place. I don't understand. Ning Fan did not understand a single word of the dialect. However, there was still an inexplicable feeling in his heart that he could not get rid of. Through this song, he seemed to see tall mountains, flowing rivers, and a certain woman who sat on the peak of a mountain since ancient times. Her fingers stroked an ice-cold long sword as she stared at the moon and moon alone for 10 years, waiting for someone to come. Fellow Taoist, could it be that you understand the language of the Yu clan of the desolate ancient immortal realm? Why don't you tell me what this song is about? I have listened to this song for countless years, but I have never understood its meaning. Taoist Nine Sword said with surprise. Fellow Taoist, you've misunderstood. I know nothing about this language. It turns out that this is the language of the Yu clan of the desolate ancient immortal realm. This is the first time I've heard of such a language. Ning Fan seemed to be immersed in the song, and was stunned for a moment. Then why are you sad? Taoist Nine Sword still did not believe him. Ning Fan shook his head without answering. All of a sudden, he heard that the song around him disappeared. He suddenly felt lost. This song has existed in this place for countless years. It will only appear on the day when the tide rises and the moon is full. If fellow Taoist wants to listen to it again, you just have to wait until the next tide rises. Taoist Nine Sword explained. I see. Ning Fan nodded and collected all his emotions. He was even more certain that this place was related to the Sword Ancestor. Otherwise, how could the Sword Ancestor's song be passed down to this day? He continued to dive deeper and deeper. After diving for an unknown amount of time, a huge shadow suddenly appeared below him. It was an abandoned cultivation planet with a bumpy surface. It was actually at the bottom of the spring. No, it was not accurate to call it a cultivation planet. It was not a planet but a moon that had lost all its light. It was a real moon. A dead moon that had sunk here for countless years. It's actually a moon. There's actually a moon in the illusory world. Ning Fan was very surprised. It was Ning Fan's first time seeing something like a sun and a moon. How could he not be surprised? Even though it was just a moon that had been dead for many years, it still gave him a great shock. The Green Lotus Sword clan was built on this abandoned moon. On the surface of the moon, there were countless withered trees. Those trees seemed to be the remaining roots of giant lotuses after they withered. The Green Lotus Sword clan used the trees as their cave dwellings. Every member of the clan absorbed the moon, lotus and primal chaos chi here to cultivate. When they saw an outsider, they were shocked. However, when they saw that Ning Fan was accompanied by their clan leader, they were relieved. Each of them whispered softly, "Is there another guest? I guess this is the 5th quasi-sage who has successfully arrived in our clan. This person doesn't seem to be as strong as the previous 4. He actually needs the help of the clan leader to reach the bottom of the spring. I wonder if this person can help our clan completely obtain the Sword Ancestor's inheritance." With Ning Fan's senses, he naturally heard the whispers of the sword spirits, but he did not care about them. His eyes were attracted by a lotus seed pod that was as huge as a mountain. It was a lotus seed pod that had withered for countless years. The lotus seeds on it had long been taken away by someone. There were dried blood stains on the dried lotus seed pod. Those were the blood of the Sword Ancestor. There was also an ancient sword mark on the dried lotus seed pod. It was a ghastly sight. Even now, there was still a sword intent that could not be looked at directly. She was injured in this place before? Ning Fan could not help but feel a sense of anger. It was like a volcano that had just awakened and erupted in his heart. If I find out who hurt her, if fellow Taoist has good eyesight, you actually recognize the Sword Ancestor's natal green lotus among the thousands of dried lotuses at first glance. Taoist Nine Sword clicked his tongue and praised. Natal green lotus? Ning Fan concealed all of his emotions and said indifferently. Rumor has it that the Sword Ancestor had once lost her natal green lotus in this place. The reason is unknown. That natal green lotus was the condensation of the sword ancestors' Tao teachings. Even though it has been destroyed, it is still very valuable to second-step cultivators like us. Who destroyed her green lotus Tao teachings? Ning Fan suddenly asked. Taoist Nine Sword was stunned. He did not understand why Ning Fan would ask such a question. However, in order to temporarily maintain a good relationship with Ning Fan, he still answered patiently. There is no way to verify this. Our Green Lotus Sword clan only gained sentience in the later generations. We don't know much about those ancient secrets. We only know that this dried lotus contains the sword ancestors' Tao teachings. Speaking of that Tao teachings, fellow Taoists should have seen some of them. Some of the sword techniques of our Green Lotus Sword clan were comprehended from it. Just as Taoist Nine Sword was getting excited, he was once again interrupted by Ning Fan's strange question. Do you have any of her old belongings here? Her old belongings? Of course not. Taoist Nine Sword narrowed his eyes. He thought to himself that this Ning Fan was really greedy. He wanted to ask for the treasures left behind by the sword ancestor as soon as they met. Of course, there were some of the sword ancestor's old belongings here. However, those things all belonged to the Green Lotus Sword clan. Why should they give them to an outsider? Even if this person seems to have some abilities and I can make use of him, I will just make use of him. It is impossible for me to give him too much in return. Are you sure you don't have anything? I hope fellow Taoists won't lie to me. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with cold light, and he said in a threatening tone. Why would I lie to you? Taoist Nine Sword's face was smiling, but his heart was filled with anger. Despite his identity, he was actually treated in such a manner by a mere devil. If it wasn't because of Ning Fan's value, he would not mind killing this ancient devil. If that's the case, you can tell me your purpose now. Ning Fan withdrew his cold light and said indifferently, if I'm not mistaken, fellow Taoist should be an ancient devil, right? To tell you the truth, in order to break open the lotus pod and obtain the sword ancestors' Tao inheritance, I need to borrow some of the ancient devil's power. No, to be exact, I need the blood of an ancient devil. After all, among the three cultivation systems of the divine, demon and devil, the blood of the devil race is the purest. It's just right for me to water the lotus pod. Fellow Taoist, you won't reject my request, right? Taoist Nine Sword said with a half smile and a half threat. His purpose was to borrow half of Ning Fan's devil blood to water the sword ancestors' natal green lotus. However, which normal person would use their own blood for others? Especially since it would cause great harm to one's body. It was something that everyone would hesitate to do. Taoist Nine Sword was certain that Ning Fan would not agree to it. If he disagrees, he would probably use some force to force Ning Fan to comply. This place was already the bottom of the spring. The chaotic qi here was unimaginably dense. As the sword spirit of the Green Lotus, the denser the chaotic qi around him, the stronger his strength would be. On the other hand, Ning Fan was an outsider. Without his help, he would not even be able to survive in this place. He would be directly killed by the chaotic qi. He had the confidence to not put Ning Fan in his eyes even though he was suspected to be a quasi-sage. If it wasn't for the fact that the process of watering the devil blood required the guidance of the ancient devil personally, Taoist Nine Sword would not even bother to consider Ning Fan's wishes and directly kill him to extract his blood. I see. So this is your purpose? Ning Fan had long been wary of this person. Thus, he was not surprised when he realized that the other party was plotting against him. As long as fellow Taoist offers half of your devil blood to water the lotus pod, I guarantee that I will let you go after this is done regardless of whether it succeeds or not. Besides, once it succeeds, I'm willing to give you some of the sword ancestors' Tao inheritance. What if I refuse? Forgive me for being blunt. Since fellow Taoist has already followed me to the bottom of the spring, it seems like you don't have any leeway to refuse. Taoist Nine Sword said with disdain. Since that's the case, let me think about it. Of course, Ning Fan did not really want to think about it. He suddenly sensed some changes in the Spirit Nong's 100-herb garden. Thus he needed some time to investigate it. He walked straight to the bottom of the dried lotus pod and sat on the ground. Then he divided his consciousness into the spirit Nong's 100-herb garden to observe the changes of the sword ancestor's soul grass. For some unknown reason, the sword ancestor's soul grass, which grew slowly, actually showed signs of accelerating growth after coming to this place. Could it be that the natal green lotus that the sword ancestor destroyed in this place is actually the best nourishment for the soul grass? It can accelerate the recovery of the sword ancestor's soul? If that's really the case, I might have to feign civility with this Taoist 9 sword. As long as it can help her. It doesn't matter even if I have to sacrifice half of my devil blood. Chapter 1227. In the end, Ning Fan agreed to Taoist 9 sword's request and offered half of his devil blood to water the sword ancestor's natal green lotus. The Green Lotus Sword clan wanted to resurrect the sword ancestor's natal green lotus and obtain its inheritance. Ning Fan also wanted to resurrect the natal green lotus and return the inheritance to the sword ancestor soul grass so that it could grow. Taoist 9 sword thought that he had successfully coerced Ning Fan, but he did not know that it was exactly what Ning Fan wanted. Seeing Ning Fan reluctantly compromise, Taoist 9 sword felt pleased inwardly. However, he did not show it on his face and returned to his initial friendly smile. I'm very pleased that fellow Taoist has made the wisest choice. No matter whether it succeeds or not, fellow Taoist is still a friend of my Green Lotus Sword clan. Friend? I don't need a friend like the Green Lotus Sword clan. Ning Fan did not agree with him. However, on the surface, he still had to pretend to be helpless and resentful. Let's cut the pleasantries. Hurry up and finish watering the devil blood, then let me go. I don't want to stay here for a second longer. Fellow Taoist, don't be anxious. If you want to carry out the resurrection ceremony, just the devil blood isn't enough. You still have to wait for another fellow Taoist to help. Before that fellow Taoist arrives, I'll have to trouble you to wait for a while. Taoist 9 sword smiled mysteriously. He took out an ancient coin and crushed it. It seemed like he was sending a message to someone far away by crushing the coin. All right. That person will definitely arrive in an hour at most. This is the agreement we made in the past. Taoist 9 sword said confidently. He deeply believed that the owner of the coin would not dare to not come. After all, he also had something on the other party. Humph. It seems like I'm not the only one being threatened by fellow Taoist. Ning Fan seemed to be very indignant, but his real emotion was surprise. The chi on the coin seems to be familiar. It seems to be the Pure Yang ancestral master of the Pure Yang sect? Strange. Isn't that Pure Yang ancestral master staying in the heaven-avoiding coffin to prolong his last breath? Why would he be involved with the Green Lotus Sword clan all of a sudden? Fellow Taoist, please calm down. It's true that my Green Lotus Sword clan offended you first, but so what? To put it bluntly, if you didn't covet the fortune here, you wouldn't have fallen to the bottom of the spring and been schemed against by this old man. As a cultivator, who hasn't suffered a few setbacks, fellow Taoist, there's no need to take it to heart. Guards. Taoist 9 sword no longer bothered with Ning Fan. Instead, he summoned a few of his clansmen and whispered some instructions to them. Before long, more than 100 burly men of the Sword Spirit clan carried a yellow wine jar that was as large as a mountain to the front. This is... Ning Fan secretly released his sense. He had already found out what was inside the wine urn. However, he still asked despite knowing the answer. Fellow Taoist, you're the first true elder devil that I've waited for countless years. However, fellow Taoist, the blood of the ancient devil ancestor is too little. It seems like there are only 4 drops. That is not enough. Therefore I want to help you, fellow Taoist, to condense more ancient demon ancestral blood. In this wine urn, there are 300 drops of the blood of the pseudo-ancient devil ancestor that I've collected after hundreds of millions of years of painstaking planning. I've used hundreds of millions of years of hard work to brew it into wine. Even though it's not the orthodox ancient devil blood wine, it's still a rare treasure. If an orthodox ancient devil drinks all of this wine, he or she can at least obtain 10 drops of ancient devil ancestor blood. I've offended you in the past. Therefore, I'll use this wine to compensate you. Taoist Nine Sword pretended to be generous and said, "Compensate? Fellow Taoist's words are really nice. You've only mentioned the benefits of this wine, but you've concealed its flaws. If I'm not mistaken, this wine is obviously brewed by extracting the primordial chaos essence. How domineering is this wine? When one drinks it, it's like drinking the primordial chaos essence raw. It will certainly cause great damage to the person who drinks it. Those quasi-saints with slightly weaker qi and blood would probably explode and die before they can even finish 1/3 of this wine. You're asking me to drink this wine. You've got ulterior motives," Ning Fan said coldly. "Humph. Now that you're trapped in my Green Lotus Sword clan, do you still have a choice to not drink it? Could it be that fellow Taoist wants to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit?" Taoist Nine Sword's expression instantly changed. He pretended to remove the sword spirit power that he had placed on Ning Fan's body. Ning Fan's expression immediately changed greatly. If the sword spirit power in his body disappears, the primordial chaos qi at the bottom of the spring would immediately rush towards him. "Fellow Taoist, why do you have to do this?" "I'll just drink this wine," Ning Fan said with an unpleasant expression. Inwardly, however, he was trying to hold back his laughter. This was the wine that Taoist Nine Sword had spent hundreds of millions of years to brew. After drinking it, he would be able to increase his ancient devil ancestor blood significantly. That's right. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. I naturally understand that this wine will cause great harm to you. I won't let you drink too much of it. Fellow Taoist only needs to drink 1/5 of it. Where are the beauties? Hurry up and serve fellow Taoist Ning the wine. As Taoist Nine Sword gave an order, more than 10 beautiful figures immediately walked out. All of them were beauties of the Green Lotus Sword clan. Of course, these beauties were also sword spirits. Each of them had already lost their primordial yin. No one knew who had plucked their primordial yin. The group of beauties set up a table and chairs for Ning Fan. Then, they urged him to drink wine in a charming manner. All of them were using spatial wine utensils. A small bottle of wine contained 500 jin of wine. However, Ning Fan just put on a helpless expression and drank very slowly. He seemed to hate this pseudo-ancient devil blood wine very much. However, this was also human nature. Which ordinary person would have the time to drink the primordial chaos wine? Even if this wine brought great benefits to ancient devils, there were probably not many second-step ancient devils who would dare to drink 500 kilograms of it. Fortunately, Ning Fan was not an ordinary person. He was a divine spirit with a crippled divine body. In the first place, he was stronger than ordinary ancient devils. Moreover, because he knew the cultivation method of the 5 elements chaotic primordial body, he was quite experienced in absorbing the power of the primordial chaos. Thus, even if he drinks the primordial chaos wine raw, he would not suffer any harm. However, he could not let Taoist Nine Sword notice it. Hence, every time Ning Fan drank some of the blood wine, he would have to pretend that he had suffered great injuries and cough out some blood. That blood was, of course, a disguise. Even so, Taoist Nine Sword was secretly shocked. His heart was filled with suspicion because the amount of blood Ning Fan coughed out was less than what he had expected. Strange. After drinking the primordial chaos wine, the backlash he suffered is much lighter than what I had imagined. Why is that so? Could it be that the physical body of an orthodox ancient devil is so strong that it has some resistance against the primordial chaos qi? Unfortunately, Taoist Nine Sword had never seen an orthodox ancient devil before. Thus, he certainly could not confirm his speculation. He could only keep an eye on Ning Fan, and did not dare to underestimate him anymore. Good wine. It's really good wine. Even though this Taoist Nine Sword has a bad character, his winemaking skills are really top-notch. Besides, this wine can actually improve the grade of my devil blood. It's really impressive. Ning Fan clicked his tongue in admiration towards the blood wine in his heart. However, he still had to pretend that he was forced to drink it. Secretly, the grade of his devil blood was improving by leaps and bounds. Originally, his devil blood was only at the grade of 4 drops of ancestral blood. He had only condensed 1/3 of the 5th drop of ancestral blood. Now, however, The 5th drop of ancestral blood was gradually being completed at an astonishing speed. Strange. This young man has only drunk 30,000 liters of blood wine, but he is already showing signs of condensing the 5th drop of ancestral blood? Taoist Nine-Sword frowned. This was somewhat different from what he had expected. Initially, he thought that even an orthodox ancient devil would need to drink at least 50,000 liters of blood wine to condense the 5th drop of ancestral blood. After all, not all the blood wine that enters one's stomach could be successfully converted into medicinal power. There would always be a lot of waste. Would it be so easy to absorb the blood wine that contained the power of the primordial chaos chi? It would already be difficult for ordinary quasi-saints to absorb 1/4 of the medicinal power. However, Ning Fan was different. He had the primordial chaos body technique. Thus, he did not waste too much of the power of the primordial chaos chi. Thus, the effect of consuming the blood wine at this moment was naturally much more obvious than the others. This was also because the power of the ancient gods and ancient devils were not interconnected. Otherwise, if the heart aperture of the ancient gods could also produce the same effect, the improvement of his devil blood would be truly heaven-defying. I get it now. This young man is already close to condensing the 5th drop of ancestral blood. That's why he only drank 30,000 liters of blood wine, and he managed to condense the 5th drop. However, if it's the 6th drop, it won't be so easy to condense it. Taoist Nine-Sword came to a sudden realization, thinking that he had found the reason. Just as expected, after Ning Fan successfully condensed the 5th drop of ancestral devil blood, he drank 200,000 liters of blood wine in a row, but he still could not condense the 6th drop. It seemed like the difficulty of condensing the 6th drop of ancestral devil blood was more than 1,000 times greater than the 5th drop. It seems like my guess is right. The reason why this young man can condense the 5th drop of ancestral devil blood so quickly is just a coincidence. Taoist Nine-Sword felt relieved. He did not like things to go out of his control. However, he did not know that he was deceived by the illusion that Ning Fan deliberately created this time. After drinking 30,000 liters of blood wine, Ning Fan had already condensed 1/3 of the 5th drop of ancestral devil blood. After drinking another 60,000 liters of blood wine, he also successfully condensed the 6th drop of ancestral devil blood. After another 50,000 liters of blood wine, the 7th drop of ancestral devil blood was also successfully condensed. Fortunately, Ning Fan noticed Taoist Nine-Sword's surprised expression. He understood that his ability to absorb the blood wine was indeed a little scary. It would expose his ability to restrain the power of the primordial chaos and make his enemies wary. Thus, he put on some disguises. Even though he had already successfully condensed the 6th and 7th drops of ancestral devil blood, he suppressed his fluctuations and did not let others know about it. In Taoist Nine-Sword's eyes, he even thought that Ning Fan had encountered many difficulties in condensing the 6th drop of ancestral devil blood. The cultivation of ancestral blood was difficult, especially for the ancient devil clan which had been deprived of the right to obtain ancestral blood. If it wasn't for Ning Fan swindling Taoist Nine-Sword's wine by chance, it would be extremely difficult for him to continue increasing the amount of ancestral devil blood. The higher the amount of ancestral blood, the more difficult it would be to cultivate. Ning Fan drank a total of 140,000 liters of blood wine, and only managed to condense the 8th drop of ancestral devil blood. For the 9th drop, he used 170,000 liters of blood wine. The 10th drop, 200,000 liters. Oh, this young man has finally condensed the 7th drop of ancestral devil blood. Huh? That's enough. If he continues drinking it, I'm worried that his body will explode, and he will die from the power of the primordial chaos. If that happens, there won't be anyone to water the devil blood anymore. Taoist Nine-Sword nodded his head in satisfaction. With a wave of his hand, he stopped the beauties from urging him to drink, and ordered his people to move the wine urns away. However, he did not know that Ning Fan had already condensed the 10th drop of ancestral devil blood at this moment. What he saw was just an illusion that Ning Fan had created. Phew! Finally, I don't have to drink this blood wine anymore. Ning Fan's face was pale and weak. He heaved a long sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Of course, his complexion and expression were all faked. Deep down, he felt that it was a pity. He still wanted to drink more blood wine. Why did Taoist Nine Sword withdraw? Could it be that he had noticed his disguise and was prepared for it? Fine. I'll think about the matter of the blood wine later. The most important thing now is to resurrect Qingling's orthodoxy and nourish the soul grass with its power. I'm sorry. Taoist Nine Sword pretended to be guilty and cupped his fists at Ning Fan, as if he was apologizing for forcing Ning Fan to drink the blood wine. In reality, he did not feel sorry at all. Instead, he was mocking Ning Fan for being weak and easily bullied. Humph. 1 hour has passed. The other fellow Taoists should have arrived by now, right? Ning Fan said in an annoyed tone. Soon. While Taoist Nine Sword was comforting Ning Fan's emotions, he suddenly saw a ray of pure sunlight silently shining into the moonlight world at the bottom of the soul spring. Then he changed the topic. Fellow Taoist Ning, you don't have to wait any longer. Fellow Taoist Lu is already here. That ray of pure sunlight arrived without a sound, hiding itself from the eyes and ears of the entire vast cold palace. When that ray of light landed on the world at the bottom of the spring, it transformed into the Pure Yang Ancestral Master. Ning Fan naturally recognized the Pure Yang Ancestral Master. He had once attacked the Pure Yang sect to denounce them. That was how he got to know this person. Even his pure refinement art was bought from this person. In his impression, the Pure Yang Ancestral Master was a greedy person who was afraid of death. 9 out of 10 of his sentences were related to the heavenly Tao metal. Moreover, due to his fear of death, he hid inside the heaven-avoiding coffin of the Pure Yang sect all day long. There was a time when even the juniors of the sect did not know that there was such a great being who was still alive in their sect. Although he was greedy for money, he was also an extremely talented person at the same time. The heaven-avoiding coffin that was famous in the northern heaven was invented by him. If it wasn't for the heaven-avoiding coffin, the overall strength of the northern heaven would not be so much stronger than the other 3 heavens. It was all thanks to him. At the same time, the Pure Yang Ancestral Master was also a titled cultivator, who held the title of God of Wealth. His creed was that money can make a god. At this moment, the Pure Yang Ancestral Master was surrounded by countless illusory figures of money, giving people a feeling that he was impenetrable. Even the primordial qi at the bottom of the spring could not hurt him at all. Ning Fan was confident that he could also achieve such a level of defense. However, he would definitely need to use all of his means. In the past, he seemed to have underestimated the strength of the Pure Yang Ancestral Master. Even though he was just a first-level quasi-saint, he was definitely one of the extremely heaven-defying ones. Why is fellow Taoist here as well? Could it be that the ancient devil blood-gushing demon that the Green Lotus Sword clan found is you? As soon as the Pure Yang Ancestral Master arrived, he saw Ning Fan and was instantly shocked. I've entered the tiger's den by mistake. I have no choice but to do so. Fellow Taoist, please excuse me. Ning Fan smiled bitterly. Oh, fellow Taoist Lu knows this fellow Taoist Ning? Taoist Nine Sword was slightly surprised, but he did not find it strange. It was too normal for the 2 old monsters of the northern heavens to know each other. It would be strange if they did not know each other. Humph. What does it have to do with you whether I know Brother Ning or not? The Pure Yang Ancestral Master could still put on a good expression when facing Ning Fan. However, he was not polite when facing Taoist Nine Sword. The atmosphere became a little awkward. Fortunately, Taoist Nine Sword also understood that he was the one who threatened the Pure Yang Ancestral Master first. It was only normal for the other party to have some complaints. Of course, he hated the Pure Yang Ancestral Master's rudeness. However, it was not like he could not tolerate it before he finished using the other party. Speaking of which, I only found out a few days ago that fellow Taoist's surname is Ning and not Zhao. According to the rumors, fellow Taoist should be in the Lost World Palace now. Why did you come here all of a sudden? Oh right, fellow Taoist, have you thought it through? Do you want to buy the remaining few pure refinement arts? If you buy all of them, I can give you some discounts. As expected, the Pure Yang Ancestral Master always talked about the heavenly Tao gold. He wanted to earn Ning Fan's money again. However, As soon as he finished speaking, the pure young ancestral master was shocked. He was just promoting his pure refinement art out of habit. However, after taking a closer look, he realized that the purity of Ningfan's magic power was no longer the same as before. The few pure refinement arts that he bought in the past were almost completed. Isn't this fellow's magic power purification speed a little too fast? At this speed, he really needs to buy more pure refinement arts as a backup. The pure young ancestral master was inwardly shocked. When he looked again, not only did the purity of Ningfan's magic power increase tremendously, even the quantity of his magic power had increased by a lot. His cultivation base was already at the 17,000 tribulation realm. With Ningfan's current cultivation base, even if he uses his full strength to fight Ningfan, he would at most have a 30% chance of winning. There was a 70% chance that he would lose. Then here comes the problem. Why would Ningfan, who was much stronger than him, fall into the Green Lotus Sword clan and be controlled by a mere Taoist nine sword? Could it be that this young man is the same as me? Both of us are putting on an act and feigning civility with Taoist nine sword? We'll talk about the deal of the pure refinement art later. Let's talk about the proper business first. Fellow Taoist, did you come here to revive this Green Lotus Tao inheritance? Ningfan asked with a smile. That's exactly why I came here. I'm ashamed to say this. Due to some reasons, I once went out to visit the Tao. During that time, I accidentally entered this place to explore. Due to a moment of carelessness, I left behind some information that could be used against me. Now, I have no choice but to obey their orders. The pure young ancestral master sighed. Fellow Taoist, why didn't you stay in the heaven-avoiding coffin? Instead, you went out to visit the Tao and even accidentally entered this place to explore? Ningfan said meaningfully. This sentence was actually transmitted to him through telepathy. The pure young ancestral master that he knew was both talented and shrewd. How could he be coerced by someone for no reason? There must be a great reason behind it. It was highly possible that the other party did it on purpose. Didn't fellow Taoist also enter the tiger's den by mistake? The pure young ancestral master also transmitted his voice to Ningfan meaningfully. The two of them only needed to exchange glances to know that the other party had ulterior motives towards the Green Lotus Sword clan. I wholeheartedly want to revive this Green Lotus Tao inheritance. I hope that fellow Taoists will not interfere. Ningfan withdrew his smile and transmitted his voice again. Then I'll have to trouble you. I also want this Green Lotus Tao inheritance. Can't you share some with me? The pure young ancestral master also withdrew his smile. What if I say no? Fellow Taoist, you really have a big appetite. Do you really want to keep the Sword Ancestors' Tao inheritance for yourself? I'll be frank with you first. Without the power of my title of fortune, you won't be able to revive the Sword Ancestors' Tao inheritance with just that bit of devil blood of yours. Since I'm contributing to it, I naturally have to share some of the Tao inheritance. Ningfan frowned. Since Taoist Nine Sword had gone through so much trouble to find the pure young ancestral master, the power of his title was most likely an indispensable item in order to revive the Green Lotus Tao inheritance. Without this person, the Green Lotus Tao inheritance would not be able to be revived. According to Ningfan's personality in the past, it was not impossible for him to have a share of the fortuitous encounters that he had with the pure young ancestral master in the past. However, he could not do so this time. This was Qingling's Tao inheritance. He would not share it with anyone. It's strange. With fellow Taoist's personality, it seems like you shouldn't have such a deep obsession with worldly possessions. The pure young ancestral master frowned. He indeed needed the power of the Sword Ancestors' Tao inheritance, but it was not a must. If Ningfan insists on taking everything for himself, he could only let go. After all, he was no longer Ningfan's match if they really fight. However, he had been plotting against the Green Lotus Sword clan for many years. It was impossible for him to give up on this matter just like that. 5,000 gold ingots. The pure young ancestral master suddenly smiled and offered a price. His intention was obvious. As long as Ningfan pays him 5,000 taels of heavenly Tao gold, he would give up the Sword Ancestors' Tao inheritance in this place. If Ningfan refuses to pay, He could just leave even if he could not defeat Ning Fan, and not help Ning Fan to revive the Sword Ancestors' Dao inheritance. What? You're saying that he is being threatened by Daoist Nine Sword, and cannot leave on his own? Stop joking. How could he be threatened by a mere quasi-saint? Would he, Lu Chunyang, be afraid of a mere Green Lotus Sword clan? Alright. Even though 5,000 gold ingots was a lot, this matter was related to the soul grass of Qingling. When it was time to spend money, Ning Fan would certainly not be reluctant to spend it. He still needed the pure Yang Ancestral Master's power to revive Qingling's Dao inheritance. As long as the pure Yang Ancestral Master facilitates this matter, it was not impossible for him to pay him some money. You're willing to pay me so much money? How refreshing. This little brother admires you even more now. The pure Yang Ancestral Master was overjoyed when he heard Ning Fan's words. Even though the Sword Ancestors' Dao inheritance was precious, he was not a sword cultivator. He only wanted to borrow some of its power. However, if Ning Fan was willing to pay him 5,000 gold ingots, he could achieve his goal with other means even if he did not obtain the Sword Ancestors' Dao inheritance. What Daoist Nine Sword did not know was that Ning Fan, and the pure Yang Ancestral Master, had reached a private agreement to divide the Sword Ancestors' Dao inheritance in this place. Seeing that the two of them kept talking to each other through telepathy, Daoist Nine Sword could not help but let out a few dry coughs to interrupt their conversation. Alright. If the two of you want to have a chat, you can find another time. Since fellow Daoist Lu is already here, it's time to carry out the ceremony to revive the Green Lotus Dao inheritance. Someone set up the sacrificial altar. As Daoist Nine Sword gave his order, the entire Green Lotus Sword clan immediately became busy. Not long after, a temporary sacrificial altar was set up. Daoist Nine Sword personally presided over the sacrificial altar. At the center of the altar was the Green Lotus Dao inheritance that had died countless years ago. Fellow Daoist Ning, please go to the Green Lotus Dao inheritance and water it with your devil blood. If I don't tell you to stop, you can't stop. Fellow Daoist Lu, please use the power of your title to change the fate of the Green Lotus Dao inheritance. When you succeed, I will naturally remove the Green Lotus Sword curse in your body. The pure Yang Ancestral Master nodded his head and began to circulate his power of the title to save the Sword Ancestor Green Lotus. Even though Ning Fan had yet to give him the 5,000 gold ingots that he had promised, he knew cultivators like Ning Fan very well. He firmly believed that as long as the other party made a promise, he would not go back on his word even if it meant his death. After receiving money from others, he would help them eliminate disasters. Even though the pure Yang Ancestral Master was greedy, he was also a man of his word. Since he had agreed to help Ning Fan obtain the Sword Ancestors' Dao inheritance, he would do his best to make it happen. However, there is one thing that I don't understand. The amount of devil blood needed to water the Sword Ancestor Green Lotus is not a small matter. It will at least consume half of this person's devil blood. Even with my help, the success rate will not be more than 30%. Even if it succeeds, the Sword Ancestors' Dao inheritance will only be resurrected to a certain extent. It's definitely not complete. It can be said that it's useful or useless. It depends on the person. This Zhao Jian is definitely not a sword cultivator. This matter cannot be hidden from my eyes. Since he's not a sword cultivator, why is he so persistent about this Sword Ancestors' Dao inheritance? Could it be that this Zhao Jian is the same as me, a handsome man with a story? The pure Yang Ancestral Master fell into deep thought as if his memories had been triggered. For a moment, his eyes became a little dazed. In his daze, he seemed to see the lady who had turned into a flying bird waving goodbye to him before she left. She was so determined, stubborn and reckless. Little Yang, in order to protect the Stone Warrior 8 formations that my father left behind, I must become eternal. After I'm gone, you have to take good care of yourself. Elder sister Yin Rong, I don't want you to die. Can you please come back? I haven't told you my feelings, sigh. A sigh escaped from the pure Yang Ancestral Master's mouth. It was filled with bitterness, but no one noticed it. He collected all the distracting thoughts in his mind and released more of his titled power. The illusory figures of money that blotted out the sky and covered the earth went into the withered green lotus. They were untraceable and unimaginable. It's time. Fellow Taoist Ning, what are you waiting for if you don't offer your blood now? Taoist Nine Sword urged. Ning Fan ignored Taoist Nine Sword. At this moment, the withered green lotus was the only thing left in his eyes and in his world. Using his fingers like a blade, he made a cut. Devil blood immediately gushed out from his arm and poured onto the withered green lotus. He could not allow the devil blood to be used as he wished. The most important thing was how the owner of the devil blood guided the devil blood. Following Taoist Nine Sword's request, Ning Fan began to smear the devil blood on his palm and spread it evenly on the entire green lotus. Before Ning Fan transformed into a human, his mother had also used her blood to smear the demon cocoon to save him. At this moment, Ning Fan only felt that his action of smearing the devil blood was very similar to that incident. There seemed to be some kind of hidden karma involved in it. As Ning Fan's devil blood flowed into the green lotus, the withered green lotus that was originally withered suddenly showed a hint of vitality. That vitality was very weak. However, at the moment when it was revealed, endless thoughts broke out of the lotus and spread across the entire world at the bottom of the spring. There was also a woman's intermittent voice that seemed to have transcended the ancient times. It sounded like she was murmuring, but he could not hear it clearly. Little butterfly. My little butterfly. I won't let you die. Even if I have to give up this sword, I won't. Avakania is the Tao. What you cannot seek is fate. What I cannot meet is you. What I cannot think of is you. What I cannot destroy is me. But now, I am willing to give up everything. I have no regrets. I will give you the chance to be born a human, even if I no longer exist in this world when you become a human. I will use this sword and this scabbard to turn into my parents to protect you and give you the warmth of this world. I will use the desolate mountain to look at the moon and give you a lifetime of moonlight. I will use all the smiles in this life to accompany you. It's a pity that I won't be able to see all of this. Did I pour rain on your heart? Unfortunately, this time, I can't hold an umbrella for you. Hee. This is the voice of samsara left behind by the sword ancestor when he came to this place in the past. We don't have to pay attention to it. Even if we listen to it, we won't be able to hear it clearly. Taoist Nine Sword explained. Don't have to pay attention to it. But if I want to pay attention to it, Ning Fan felt lost. He could not hear what the sword ancestor had said in this place in the past. He only felt an inexplicable sense of loss and sadness. The rain intent around him turned into thousands of raindrops as his emotions were revealed, sprinkling on the entire moonlight world at the bottom of the spring. The karma between him and the sword ancestor was so deep. However, he knew too little about the sword ancestor's life. She was like a mystery. She was like a silhouette living in the moonlight. She came and went again and again and again. So this time, I must make her stay. Even if I only keep a trace of her remnant soul and a stalk of soul grass, I will not allow the heavens to take it away. Time passed slowly. Ning Fan's chi gradually became weaker. After all, he had lost such a large amount of blood essence. Even if he was a divine spirit, he could not bear the burden. He had already watered the lotus with 1/3 of his blood essence. However, the life force that the withered lotus gave him was still pitifully little. This made Ning Fan very disappointed. The difficulty of reviving the sword ancestor's orthodoxy was obviously much higher than what everyone expected. Seeing this, Taoist Nine Sword's expression turned extremely ugly. According to this progress, even if he drains all of Ning Fan's devil blood, it would still not be enough to revive the sword ancestor's orthodoxy. It seems like I can only give up. These 5,000 taels of heavenly Tao gold are too difficult to earn. Pure Young Ancestral Master sighed. Suddenly, his expression changed greatly. At this moment, Ning Fan offered a drop of ancestral-level devil blood and watered it on the green lotus. It was the ancestral blood, and it was the ancestral blood of an ancient devil that was the most difficult to cultivate. Only a madman would pay such a price to revive a green lotus that had withered for many years. Ha ha ha. Good job. Taoist Nine Sword was overjoyed. He did not care whether Ning Fan was crazy or not. It couldn't be better that Ning Fan was willing to give up his ancestral blood to water the green lotus. Now he did not have to force him. Out of the 10 drops of ancestral devil blood, there were only 9 drops left. Just 1 drop of ancestral blood was still far from enough to revive the sword ancestor's orthodoxy. Then, I'll use the second drop. If 2 drops aren't enough, I'll use 4 drops. If 4 drops aren't enough, I'll use all of them. This young man really hit himself well. I thought he had only cultivated 7 drops of ancestral devil blood, but I didn't expect him to cultivate 10 drops. I've underestimated this young man too much. Taoist 9 Sword was both surprised and delighted. He's crazy. He's crazy. 10 drops of ancestral devil blood. This madman has sacrificed 10 drops of ancestral devil blood. Does he know what 10 drops of ancestral devil blood mean to an ancient devil? Pure Young Ancestral Master was deeply touched. He somehow understood Ning Fan's current madness. It was because he was once as crazy and obsessed as Ning Fan. For the first time in his life, the way Pure Young Ancestral Master looked at Ning Fan was not as if he was looking at a fat sheep. Instead, his eyes were filled with admiration and seriousness. Even though I don't know why this young man is so crazy, I know that it must be because of something more important than his life. Ha ha ha. What a great Tao monarch Ning Fan. I've actually underestimated you in the past. If cultivators of our generation lack this madness and obsession, it's fine if we don't cultivate our Tao. Since you want to be crazy, I'll accompany you. How can I accept 5,000 gold taels from you for nothing? He broke the titled void. The Pure Young Ancestral Master was really generous. He actually summoned the titled void, and used the collapse of the void in exchange for the divine power of money to forcefully change the fate of the Green Lotus. The fate of the Green Lotus was supposed to be extinct. However, the Pure Young Ancestral Master actually managed to turn a trace of its vitality around. As such, when Ning Fan smeared the ancestral devil blood evenly, the Green Lotus finally began to break free from its withered state. It emitted thousands of rays of green light. Countless green lotuses bloomed in the world of moonlight. They looked illusory and real at the same time, dyeing the entire world of moonlight into a blue sky. The reason why the blue sky was dyed with devil blood might not necessarily be for slaughter. The primal chaos green lotus might not necessarily be for eternity. Ning Fan gritted his teeth and endured the waves of weakness coming from his body. Looking at the blooming green lotus in the world of moonlight, he finally revealed a smile. Even though it was just a trace of resurrection, he actually managed to resurrect a trace of the sword ancestors' destroyed Tao inheritance. As long as he gives this trace of Tao inheritance to the soul grass, it will certainly grow a lot. Ha. The revival of the sword ancestors' Tao inheritance is in sight. Fellow Taoist Ning, fellow Taoist Lu, my Green Lotus Sword tribe no longer needs you too. You can scram now. If you dare to covet it, don't blame me for killing you. Taoist 9 Sword laughed out loud. Ha. Pure Young Ancestral Master also laughed. He was laughing at Taoist 9 Sword's foolishness. The revival of the Green Lotus Sword clan is in sight? Ha. It should be destruction. The Pure Young Ancestral Master did not know why Ning Fan was so obsessed with the sword ancestors' Tao orthodoxy. However, he knew everything. Anyone who dared to snatch something from a devil should be prepared to die. Taoist 9 Sword had no idea how powerful it was. He turned into a streak of sword light and headed straight for the Green Lotus, wanting to retrieve it. However, before it could get close to the Green Lotus, it was forced back by Ning Fan's immense baleful qi. What a monstrous killing karma. What a domineering Tao will. This item belongs to me, Ning Fan. I will kill whoever dares to snatch it from me. Chapter 1228. What kind of killing was this? The land of the northern heavenly profound gate actually gave birth to such a demon. In the face of Ning Fan's monstrous baleful qi, Taoist 9 Sword, who was a dignified quasi-saint realm Taoist, actually felt a chill penetrating his body. He could not help but take tens of steps back, as if he was avoiding a ferocious beast. However, the shock only lasted for a moment. Taoist 9 Sword quickly composed himself and thought to himself, So what if this kid's aura is frightening? This was the bottom of the moon ancestral soul spring. This was the territory of the Green Lotus Sword tribe. In this old man's territory, even if you are a true dragon, you still have to obediently coil up. Order. Taoist Nine Sword gave an order, and withdrew the power of the sword spirit that was protecting Ning Fan. Without the protection of the Green Lotus Sword clan, the primordial chi at the bottom of the spring immediately locked onto Ning Fan with killing intent. The concentration of primordial chaos here was too high, and all sorts of primordial chaos transformations could already be seen. Amidst the deafening rumbles, the primordial chi in the surroundings turned into the shadows of thousands of immemorial mountains and fell from the sky. In the next moment, it turned into an illusory primordial ocean, engulfing Ning Fan. That immemorial mountain was enough to make an immortal emperor vomit blood. Even a sage-to-be would have to dodge when thousands of them fell at the same time. That primordial ocean was enough to drown the great Taos of the heavens. Once he was swept into the sea, his Tao insight would sink to the bottom of the sea forever. However, all of these were not reasons for Ning Fan to compromise. Qingling's Tao legacy, the verdant lotus, was right behind him. He would not give it up to anyone. Forget about the illusory ancient mountain and the primordial sea. Even if the immortal emperor of the true world truly used the primordial mountains and seas to suppress him, he would not lower his head. Ning Fan summoned the ocean-defying sword. His eyes were filled with monstrous devil intent. One sword strike could shatter 1,000 mountains. If it spat out the flame thunder fire, even the great desolate sea would be evaporated. Seeing that the illusory mountains and seas could not hurt Ning Fan, the power of the chaotic primordial chi in the surroundings increased tremendously. It began to form layers of mysterious heavenly Tao lines. Those lines grew in number and in the end, they actually condensed into a massive palm print. The palm print descended from the sky, seeming to be able to tear apart primordial chaos, its might unfathomable. Many northern heaven quasi-sages had tried to explore the bottom of the soul springs, but in the end, they were repelled by the palm lines formed by the primordial chi. The palm print was so terrifying that only second-level quasi-sages would dare to take it head-on. Humph! Ignorant child. Today, I will teach you how terrifying the primordial chaos realm is. Taoist Nine Sword was waiting to see Ning Fan suffer a setback. All of a sudden, his expression changed drastically. 100 swords. Ning Fan unleashed all of his magic power. In the blink of an eye, he slashed 100 times at the palm mark and actually shattered it into pieces. After the primordial chi was shattered, it still wanted to attack Ning Fan again. However, Ning Fan was one step ahead of it. The current Ning Fan was already very different from when he first entered the soul spring. He had already cultivated the 5 elements mixed primordial body and was extremely resistant to the primordial chi. Ning Fan circulated the cultivation method in his body accordingly. He actually began to swallow the primal chaos chi around him in huge gulps. You're crazy. This is primordial chaos. This is... Taoist Nine Sword was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Even the pure young ancestral master was shocked by Ning Fan's action. They were at the bottom of the spring and not the upper layer of the soul spring. The density of the primordial chaos here was extraordinary. Even ancient great cultivators would not dare to devour the primordial chaos here. This brat actually dared. Ning Fan did not even bother to look at Taoist Nine Sword's shocked expression. He only focused on doing one thing. Tun tun tun. His nature was that of a devil. His devil Tao was to use toughness to conquer toughness. He wanted to destroy all the primordial chaos chi in this place in the most brutal way possible. Stop. Stop right now. You can't devour all the primordial chaos in this place. This is another pillar of my Green Lotus Sword clan's revival. Didn't you hear me telling you to stop? Taoist Nine Sword was enraged. The first sword was finally unsheathed. It was a low-grade innate sword. A flying sword of this level was not enough to attract Ning Fan's attention. However, the one who controlled the sword was Taoist Nine Sword, the quasi-sacred sword spirit. Even though the treasured sword was weak, its sword spirit was extremely strong. It made the power of this sword almost invincible among low-grade innate magic treasures. The sword soared into the sky. The sword light suddenly turned into 100,000 rays of moonlight, sprinkling down on Ningfan. It was a very beautiful sword move. However, it contained monstrous killing intent. The 100,000 rays of moonlight were not formed by the scattered sword light. Instead, they were formed by the sword making 100,000 sword slashes at Ningfan in an instant. 100,000 sword slashes were made in an instant. Even Ningfan found it a little difficult to dodge the speed of the slashes. This sword technique must contain a trace of the principle of time, in order to achieve such an unimaginable speed. In everyone's eyes, Ningfan seemed to have been turned into a sieve by the 100,000 sword lights. However, strangely enough, no blood flowed out. I actually hit him. This young man is really weak. Daoist Nine Sword's face was filled with joy. He did not expect Ningfan to be so easy to deal with. But soon after, he couldn't smile anymore. Ningfan, who had been stabbed by him 100,000 times, actually began to wither. Eventually, his color faded and he became a withered treant. Then a cold voice suddenly came from behind him. Do you feel so happy after injuring my clone? Bang! An unimaginable fist force suddenly came crashing down, directly flattening Daoist Nine Sword's face. His teeth were broken and blood spurted out from his mouth. Then he was sent flying. Surprisingly, Ningfan had used his tree demon clone to dodge the 100,000 slashes and counterattacked with the ancient devil mountain breaking strike. Daoist Nine Sword was sent flying for several thousand zhang away. Before he managed to stabilize his body with difficulty, he stared at Ningfan in disbelief. Even though he was just a quasi-saint realm expert, the body of his sword spirit was tempered to the point that it was not weaker than a quasi-saint realm expert. Given the strength of a quasi-saint realm expert's physical body, his face was actually flattened by someone else's punch. The fist force of this person was just too terrifying. You're actually a body cultivator. Daoist Nine Sword exclaimed in shock and anger. However, as soon as he said those words, he felt that he had said something useless. Since this young man was an ancient devil, he was certainly a body cultivator. It was not strange at all for him to have such fist force. Are these the only injuries you have? Ningfan said emotionlessly. Without activating his eternal true body and executing consecutive attacks, the ancient devil mountain breaking strike really did not pose much of a threat to a quasi-saint realm expert. It actually could not even injure a quasi-saint realm expert who received the ancient devil mountain breaking strike. Since that's the case, I'll just activate my eternal true body. Eternal true body, activate. Cross-shaped halo, activate. Without giving Daoist Nine Sword any time to be surprised, the ancient devil mountain breaking strike that was like a storm had already arrived at him. Not good. Second sword, unsheath. The characteristic of Daoist Nine Sword's first real sword was its extremely fast speed. The second sword was a defensive sword. The body of the sword was like a shield, and its sword chi was extremely strong. In an instant, the sword transformed into 3,000 layers of chi walls, protecting Daoist Nine Sword. One had to admit that the defense of this second sword was really strong. Even the 800 ancient devil mountain breaking strikes could not penetrate its chi wall defense. However, when Ningfan's punches became stronger and stronger, reaching the destructive power of 3,000 consecutive strikes, the defense of this sword finally began to waver. Boom! The 3,000 chi walls only lasted for tens of breaths before they were pierced by Ningfan. Daoist Nine Sword's second real sword along with his first real sword were all shattered into pieces by Ningfan. Even he himself was like a withered leaf in the storm of punches. He was constantly being hit and destroyed. The ancient devil mountain breaking strike was just too stimulating for a quasi-saint realm expert like him. Daoist Nine Sword was terrified. If he still does not do anything, he would definitely be blasted to death by Ningfan's random punches. 7 stars sword formation, protective heavens. Daoist Nine Sword summoned the remaining 5 real swords and formed an illusionary sword formation to protect his surroundings. Only then did he barely manage to block Ningfan's torrential attacks. Unfortunately, he had used this sword formation too late. At this moment, 2 of his real swords had already been destroyed by Ningfan. There were only 5 swords left that could be used to form the formation. The power of the sword formation was already much weaker than before. Fortunately, this sword formation could also absorb the primordial qi to strengthen its defense. Under the enhancement of the primordial qi, the defense of Taoist nine-sword formation had more than doubled. Even the 8,000 ancient Devil Mountain breaking strikes could not break the barrier of the formation. Huff. That was close. I was almost killed by this young man. How despicable. Let me show you the power of my sword formation. This formation is not just for defense. It also has more than 100 million variations. As long as I turn the formation it will turn into a supreme killing formation. Before Taoist nine-sword could finish his nonsense, he suddenly lost his voice in fear. Ningfan saw that his forceful attacks on the sword formation were ineffective. He immediately withdrew his fists and stepped on golden flames, walking towards the sword formation step by step. Every step that Ningfan's giant body of golden flames took would leave an indelible golden flame footprint in heaven and earth. He did not seem to be walking between heaven and earth. Instead, it was as if he was walking on the veins of heaven and earth. Every step that he took was actually the key to the great momentum of heaven and earth. When he took 9 steps in an instant, the entire heaven and earth began to shake and become unstable. Bang! Bang! The great momentum of heaven and earth collapsed under Ningfan's footsteps. Without the support of the great momentum, the sword formation naturally collapsed. How could it survive alone? The powerful sword formation that could defend against the 8,000 ancient Devil Mountain breaking strikes could not withstand Ningfan's 9 steps heaven-trampling strikes in the end. When the sword formation collapsed, Taoist nine-sword's remaining 5 real swords also collapsed at the same time. At this moment, all 7 of Taoist nine-sword's real swords were destroyed. The only things that he could rely on were his 2 divine ability swords. Ningfan, you and I are sworn enemies. Taoist nine-sword was infuriated. He had spent hundreds of millions of years to refine the 9 swords that had 7 corporeal swords and 2 void swords. Today, however, Ningfan had destroyed 7 of his real swords. His divine ability was greatly damaged. How could he not be filled with hatred? When the rage in his chest continued to fill up, Taoist nine-sword finally met the condition to activate his eternal true body, which he had not used for a long time. His eternal true body was a special true body. It could only be activated under certain conditions. The conditions to activate a special true body were different. Taoist nine-sword needed to accumulate enough rage in order to activate his true body. At this moment, he had fulfilled the condition. What Taoist nine-sword cultivated was actually the Buddhist true body. His true body was a glaring Vajra who was standing on a green lotus throne. 2 rays of sword light flashed like lightning in the eyes of his true body. Those 2 swords were the only 2 divine ability swords that he had left. My 8th sword is called Golden Light Glaring. It contains the rage that I have been fighting against fate for my entire life. No matter what, I will bring the Green Lotus Sword clan out of this world at the bottom of the spring. My clan was born in the primordial era, and will die in the primordial era. If we leave the primordial era, we will certainly die. However, if we absorb the power of the sword ancestors' orthodoxy, we might have a chance to live in the outside world. For this matter, I will not give up the sword ancestors' orthodoxy to anyone. No matter how strong you are, you won't be able to do it. Roar! Taoist nine-sword's anger soared to the sky. The 8th ray of sword light in his left eye turned into blazing flames and flew out of his left eye, aiming at Ningfan. It was a sword of wrath. This sword had accumulated the wrath of Taoist nine-sword for hundreds of millions of years. If this sword slashes the dantian of a quasi-saint, the flames on the sword would be enough to wipe out the primordial spirit of a quasi-saint instantly. It was extremely dangerous. Of course, such a powerful sword must have a flaw. The flaw was that this sword could only be used once. After that, it would definitely dissipate. In his rage, there was also a belief that he must lead his clan to the outside world no matter what. Unfortunately, Taoist nine-sword's belief could not shake Ningfan's determination to fight for the Green Lotus sect. Taoist nine-sword had his reasons for not backing down, but Ningfan had the same reason as well. Fighting and killing for the sake of their beliefs, was the destiny of cultivators. Rain Dragon, swallow this sword for me. Facing Taoist Nine Swords' menacing eighth sword, Ningfan suddenly gave an order. The rain intent of heaven and earth immediately condensed into a 3-zhang-long rain dragon. The body of that rain dragon was not huge, and it did not seem to be imposing at all. After it was summoned by Ningfan, it yawned lazily as if it was not interested in anything in the world. It had a strong personality. However, when Taoist Nine Swords' Wrath Sword light slashed at it, the eyes of the rain dragon suddenly lit up. Battle intent surged in its eyes. Then, it roared into the sky and directly opened its mouth, swallowing Taoist Nine Swords' Wrath Sword light. The wrath on the sword could even wipe out the primordial spirit of a quasi-saint instantly. Yet, a small rain dragon actually dared to swallow it. This scene was really unimaginable. Even the gigantic dragons under the command of the Rain Master would not dare to swallow such a powerful sword light, as they would certainly die if they did so. What was strange was that Ningfan's 3-zhang rain dragon actually did not die after swallowing such a powerful sword light. It just rolled on the ground and wailed in pain. That was all. The wailing and rolling on the ground only lasted for 10 breaths. After that, the pain in the rain dragon's body subsided. It had actually digested the 8th sword light that was formed from Taoist Nine Swords' wrath. Burped at the rain dragon let out a comfortable burp. Then it happily circled around Ningfan's true body of golden flames, as if it was called out by its master to play with it again. The pure young ancestral master was dumbfounded. Taoist Nine Swords seemed to have suffered a huge blow and was directly petrified. Who would have thought that such an earth-shattering sword light would actually be easily blocked by an inconspicuous little dragon? This was just like a dream. Impossible. Taoist Nine Sword finally let out an indignant roar. What exactly is that 3-zhang rain dragon? Why did it swallow his wrath so easily? He did not believe that this was real. This is the source of Tao art. A living being that was formed from the source of Tao art is almost immortal. That's why it dared to swallow such a powerful sword technique. The source of Tao art. He has actually come into contact with a trace of the source of Tao art. The pure young ancestral master took a closer look and found some clues. Then he was deeply shocked because the source of Tao art was too profound. Even he found it difficult to step into its doorstep. However, Ningfan could do it. However, at the same time he felt a little strange. Why does Ningfan's rain dragon look so similar to the dragons that true monarch North Sea raised? It should just be a coincidence. After all, true monarch North Sea's rain dragon has yet to reach the level of the source of Tao art. It could not swallow a sword technique of this level. Of course, the pure young ancestral master did not know that Ningfan's rain dragon was really snatched from true monarch North Sea. However, Ningfan's rain dragon was far stronger than true monarch North Sea's. It was because true monarch North Sea only possessed the power of the rain title. However, after Ningfan cultivated the rain palm position, he also devoured some of the power of the rain title. The palm position and the rain title were of the same origin but were different. When the two of them were combined, they would form the source of Tao art. Living beings with divine abilities that were created from the source of Tao art usually had the characteristic of immortality. Ordinary means could not harm them. Ningfan's rain dragon was such a case. Even though its body was small, it was much stronger than true monarch North Sea's rain dragon. I refuse to accept this. Taoist Nine Sword roared at the sky as if he had gone mad. He had been planning for his entire life, so that his people could get out of the soul spring. Just as he was about to achieve his wish, an obstacle like Ningfan appeared. Even the 8th sword could not kill Ningfan. What else could he do? The only sword technique he had left was the 9th sword. The 8th sword was the condensation of his anger in his entire life. The 9th sword was the condensation of his entire life's anger. If he uses this sword technique, he will certainly die. However, if his death could help him kill the outsiders in this place and help his people obtain the orthodoxy of the sword ancestor, then his death would be meaningful. This is my 9th sword. Once this sword technique is used, I will certainly die. Fellow Taoist Ning, fellow Taoist Lu, you two are too much of a hindrance. Follow me to the 9 nether yellow spring. At this moment, Taoist Nine Swords' blood essence turned green. Then with a loud bang his flesh and blood exploded. The spirit body of his sword spirit was destroyed. His flesh and blood turned into a towering green blood. When the green blood condensed, it turned into a 1,000 zhang large sword. The tip of the sword locked onto Ningfan and the pure young ancestral master. This was Taoist Nine Sword's life-risking attack. He swore to kill all the outsiders in this place and fight for a future for his people. Clan leader, stop it now. Countless members of the Green Lotus clan knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. Their situation was pitiful and sad. They only had themselves to blame. The pure young ancestral master's expression changed drastically. In a flash he appeared beside Ningfan and said anxiously, "You've underestimated the Nine-Sword Taoist sect. This person is even crazier than you and me. He used his life to transform into a sword. The power of this sword can severely injure a second-level quasi-saint. Let's go now." The pure young ancestral master wanted to pull Ningfan away, but Ningfan did not plan to leave. The evil intent in his eyes faded away, and he looked at the sword light which Taoist Nine Sword had transformed into with his life. Ningfan did not like Taoist Nine Sword's shrewdness and character. However, he did not expect that Taoist Nine Sword would actually do something that he acknowledged in the end. This person was also quite a character. As the clan leader, you dare to sacrifice yourself for the future of the clan. From this point of view, you're quite qualified to be the clan leader. Unfortunately, there is no right or wrong in the matters of cultivation. There are only different standpoints. You and I are destined to be enemies and not friends. The only thing I can do is to send you to your death with my strongest attack. Ningfan seemed to be murmuring to himself. At the same time, he also felt like he was talking to his enemy, Taoist Nine Sword. He wanted to use his strongest attack to respond to Taoist Nine Sword's life-risking sword attack. Escape? There was no need for that. The Rain Dragon was eager to give it a try. At the same time it was a little afraid. It seemed like it wanted to help Ningfan devour this sword attack to gain some merit. However, it also faintly felt that if it devoured this sword attack, the origin of its Tao art would be destroyed. Ningfan did not order the Rain Dragon to attack. Instead he withdrew it. With a point of his finger, the entire world at the bottom of the spring was covered by the void rain. With another point of his finger, countless gigantic trees grew out of the void rain. It was actually the power of the Wood Divine Spirit domain that overlapped with the void rain. Fellow Taoist Nine Sword, you've always been wrong about one thing. This place isn't the home ground of your Green Lotus Sword clan. As long as I want to, any place can become my home ground. Under the nourishment of the void rain, the boundless gigantic trees began to grow at an insane rate. This was not the power that the wood domain originally possessed. It was a qualitative change that was formed after it merged with the void rain. Water and wood. The nature of rain and wood complemented each other, causing the power of the wood domain to increase exponentially. In this wood domain, Ningfan was the well-deserved monarch. Even a second-level quasi-saint would find it hard to defeat him in his domain. Taoist Nine Sword's unwilling voice reverberated between heaven and earth. Then his ninth sword attack turned into countless green swords and rained down on Ningfan like a rainstorm. Rumble. Countless wooden walls rose from the ground, protecting Ningfan from all directions. Taoist Nine Sword's life-risking sword kept destroying the gigantic trees that were blocking his way. Under the nourishment of the rain, the gigantic trees grew again and again. There was no end to them. After an unknown period of time, Taoist Nine Sword light finally began to weaken and dissipate. When everything calmed down and the smoke and dust dispersed, Ningfan stood on the ruins of countless gigantic trees, unscathed. Taoist Nine Sword's life-risking sword attack could not do anything to him in the end. Our clan leader has lost. Even his life-risking sword attack can't hurt this man at all. The entire Green Lotus Sword clan was in a daze and fell into despair. When the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain intact? As soon as their clan leader died, most of them would not be able to continue living. The palm seed of rain and the palm seed of wood which have come into contact with a trace of the origin of Tao law. The pure young ancestral master was so shocked that he could not close his mouth. He had never thought that Ning Fan was actually a cultivator with multiple palm seats, which was one of the few in history. This was because he could not recognize the divine lattice of wood, and mistook it for the palm seat of wood. If he knew that Ning Fan possessed a divine lattice that was 3 grades higher than the palm seat of wood, he would probably be even more shocked. This is the full strength of this young man. Initially, I thought that I would have a 30% chance of winning against him. Now it seems like I barely have a 10% chance of winning against him. The pure young ancestral master smiled bitterly. After a bitter smile, he felt a hint of pity. Unfortunately, he only found out in the end that Taoist Nine Sword, whom he looked down upon in the past, was also a real man. He somewhat admired Taoist Nine Sword's boldness, but that was all. There were too many respectable enemies on the path of cultivation. Even so, a battle was inevitable in the end. What Taoist Nine Sword seeks is the future of the clan. I wonder what this young man is fighting for. The pure young ancestral master looked at Ning Fan inquiringly. Ning Fan did not answer him. He just dispersed his various abilities and indifferently walked towards the remaining members of the Green Lotus clan. As soon as they saw Ning Fan approaching them, their faces turned pale with fear. They felt that a great disaster was about to befall them. Is he trying to eliminate the root of the problem? A real man must be ruthless. I can't blame this young man for being ruthless. The pure young ancestral master thought to himself. Ning Fan did not exterminate the entire clan as he had imagined. He just casually asked the members of the Green Lotus clan. I heard that the members of the Green Lotus clan will never be able to leave this region. Why, yes. The members of the Green Lotus clan seemed to have seen a glimmer of hope, and answered respectfully. Then just stay here, and live well for your clan leader. All you want is to break the seal of this place and go to the outside world. However, you don't know that the sea of blood in the outside world is thousands of times better than this place. To the outside world, this place is no different from a paradise. It's really sad if you don't know that you're living in bliss. There will always be people who want to live a better life. But what is a better life? Ning Fan rarely spoke so much. Perhaps the matter regarding Taoist Nine Sword had touched his heart. That was why he said a few more words to give these members of the Green Lotus clan some advice. The members of the Green Lotus clan wanted to go to the outside world and see the vast and boundless Soul Spring world. They wanted to see the starry sky outside. The immortal cultivators of the illusory dream world had been pursuing the giant gate of infinite wasteland. They wanted to pass through the gate and go to the true world. There was nothing wrong with being curious. There was nothing wrong with wanting to live a better life. However, it was equally important to cherish everything that they had now. Ning Fan raised his eyes and looked at the sky. He looked at the world of moonlight. His exhausted heart deeply envied the peaceful life of the members of the Green Lotus Sword clan. He was actually not interested in longevity or cultivation. He just wanted to stay in 7 Apricot City and live a peaceful life with his friends and family. The values of those who live in battles and those who live a peaceful life were different. It was not a question of right or wrong. It was just because he didn't have it that he wanted to obtain it. That was why he was curious about it. Ning Fan heaved a sigh of relief and got rid of all the distracting thoughts in his mind. He no longer cared about the members of the Green Lotus clan in this place, and began to collect the inheritance of the Green Lotus sect. Naturally, no one dared to stop him. Countless members of the Green Lotus clan knelt on the ground and cried tears of joy, thanking Ning Fan for sparing their lives. Some members of the Green Lotus clan even kowtowed to Ning Fan 3 times and kowtowed to him 9 times. They were afraid that if they kowtowed too little or were not sincere enough, Ning Fan would change his mind and not let them live. It was no wonder that these members of the Green Lotus clan regarded Ning Fan as a kind person for 10 generations. The members of the Green Lotus Sword clan plotted against Ning Fan first, but Ning Fan was able to turn a big problem into a small one, and let bygones be bygones. Who else could be so magnanimous if they were not a kind person for 10 generations? As for the battle between Ning Fan and the clan leader, it was just a battle between cultivators. There was nothing that could be done about it. Both of them fought fair and square. There was no doubt that Ning Fan was not a kind person. Even the pure young ancestral master was a little surprised. Everyone in the world thought that Ning Fan was some kind of Tao-de-perfected sovereign, but he saw through Ning Fan's evil nature. He knew that Ning Fan was a devil lord who committed heinous crimes. How could he be considered as a kind person? Even such a devil lord would have times where he did not kill him. Of course, he would be surprised. Deep in Brother Ning's heart, it seems like, you hate killing? The pure young ancestral master asked a question that even he himself did not quite believe. In this world, will there be someone who likes killing for its own sake? If that person likes killing for its own sake, then that person is not worthy to be called a human. There was once a person who told me this. Go up the mountain to be an immortal, and go down the mountain to be a human. Mortals dream of becoming immortals, but they don't know that becoming an immortal means killing. It means that they have no choice but to do so. The period when they are a human is the happiest period of their life. Ning Fan casually answered while keeping the Tao inheritance green lotus. Go up the mountain to be an immortal, and go down the mountain to be a human. The pure young ancestral master only heard a rumbling sound in his ears, as if he was listening to the voice of the heavens. This sentence actually described the sea of blood in the cultivation world, and the essence of immortals. He really wanted to know what kind of person could come up with such a sentence. Since he was curious, he naturally asked casually. Ning Fan, however, did not answer him. Everything related to immortal sovereign Zido was a great secret of heaven and earth. He did not want to talk about it with others. Finally, the Tao inheritance green lotus was completely kept by Ning Fan. When Ning Fan kept the entire Tao inheritance green lotus into the divine farmer 100 herbs garden, it directly turned into a ray of light and flew into the ancestral sword soul grass. After that, the ancestral sword soul grass continued to grow. Eventually, it actually grew into a blooming green lotus. As soon as the lotus bloomed, it actually looked like a woman. She was passing through time and space and smiling at Ning Fan. Ning Fan felt inexplicably sad when he saw her, and he did not dare to look at her any longer. The lotus, on the other hand, wanted to look at Ning Fan more. It was very cheerful and swayed with the wind as if it was dancing. What a pity! After absorbing such a large amount of power of the Tao inheritance, it only grew from a soul grass into a lotus. It's still far from being able to condense the azure spirit soul. Ning Fan let out a long sigh. Although he didn't do it in front of the pure young patriarch, the scene of him using his orthodoxy to cultivate the soul grass was still predicted by the pure young patriarch with the power of Qian Neng. You've gone mad. You've gone mad. You actually paid such a price to obtain the sword ancestors' Tao inheritance just to grow flowers. You're really the most serious love-struck fool in the world. The pure young ancestral master really wanted to cry. He risked his life to accompany Ning Fan. In order to help Ning Fan resurrect the sword ancestors' Tao inheritance, he even broke the titled void space. He was still wondering what kind of extraordinary reason Ning Fan had to be so crazy. It turned out that it was just to grow flowers. How did you know what I did? Ning Fan frowned slightly. He did not like to be foreseen by others. It would make him feel very insecure. However, his brows loosened and he shook his head with a smile, sighing at the unfathomable means of the pure young ancestral master. In the end, he did not tell the pure young ancestral master more about the azure spirit. After all, the pure young ancestral master had helped him a lot by reviving the green lotus Tao inheritance. Even though it was just a deal, it also made him have some friendly relations with the pure young ancestral master. Since that was the case, he was too lazy to make a fuss about the fact that this person managed to foresee some of his secrets. This is the reward that you and I agreed on. Ning Fan flipped his hand and a storage pouch appeared in his hand. He then handed it to the pure young ancestral master. The pure young ancestral master received the storage pouch with a smile. How could he not know that it contained heavenly Tao gold? However, when he saw the amount of heavenly Tao gold in the pouch, his old face immediately turned black. He was unhappy. It was not because Ning Fan had given him less heavenly Tao gold. It was because Ning Fan had given him more. Why did you give me 10,000 taels of silver? The pure young ancestral master was displeased. The agreement between them was clearly 5,000 taels of silver. In order to help me, fellow Taoists seem to have even broken the titled void space. Such a loss naturally needs to be compensated. Ning Fan said in surprise. In his impression, the pure young ancestral master should be extremely greedy for money. Isn't it good to give him more money? Why did this person get angry? Humph. A gentleman loves money, but he must obtain it in a proper way. The agreement between me and fellow Taoist is 5,000 taels of gold. Not a single coin more. As for the titled void space, even though it has been broken, fellow Taoist doesn't have to worry too much about it because this matter isn't considered as a loss at all. As long as you have enough money, it can be restored in an instant. This is the ability of my titled void space. You can take the extra money back. The pure young ancestral master snorted coldly. With a wave of his palm, the storage pouch in his hand suddenly split into two in the midst of golden light. One of the storage pouches took out a portion of the heavenly Tao gold and returned it to Ning Fan angrily. I have underestimated fellow Taoist. Ning Fan smiled apologetically. Of course, he felt apologetic for treating the pure young ancestral master as a greedy person. When he scanned the storage pouch with his spirit sense, his face was suddenly filled with surprise. With a cultivation base like his senses were extremely sharp. With just a sweep of his spirit sense, he could already know the amount of heavenly Tao gold in the storage pouch without any error. The amount of heavenly Tao gold that the pure young ancestral master returned to him was not 5,000 taels. It was 4,999 taels. 1 tael short. Since fellow Taoist treats me as a greedy person, I will show you how greedy I am. This extra tael of heavenly Tao gold is just a small punishment for fellow Taoist. Fellow Taoist can forget about getting it back. The pure young ancestral master said proudly. That expression of his made him feel as if taking 1 tael of heavenly Tao gold from Ning Fan was a great advantage. Ning Fan could not help but laugh. This pure young ancestral master is really an interesting person. I gave him an extra 5,000 taels of gold, but he rejected it righteously. Instead, he had to find some crooked excuses to embezzle 1 tael of heavenly Tao gold. Why bother? Or could it be that the difference between 1 tael and 4,999 taels is the ratio of greed and principle in his heart? Even though this person is greedy, he also has principles. That's all. Since this matter has been settled, I will take my leave first. I'm different from fellow Taoist. After all, I'm someone who relies on the heaven evasion coffin to survive. I can't leave the coffin for too long. Farewell. Farewell. The pure young ancestral master seemed to be afraid that Ning Fan would take back the 1 tael of heavenly Tao gold that he had taken. Thus, he left in a hurry as if he was fleeing from something. He even completely forgot about promoting the other few purity refining techniques to Ning Fan. It seems like it's time for me to leave too. Ning Fan looked at this world of moonlight and felt a little reluctant to leave. After all, Qing Ling's footprints had been left here before. However, he still had to leave after all. Perhaps one day, when he no longer has to deal with so many matters, he could return to this place and stay for a while. He could listen to Qing Ling's ancient song When the Tide Rises and the Moon Rises. Speaking of which, this dead moon is actually a treasure as well. Ning Fan looked at the gigantic moon beneath his feet. However, he did not take it away. If I take this moon away, there will no longer be any moonlight in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. How regretful would that be? I'll just leave this moon here. He would not keep it. Of course, he would not allow others to keep it either. Judging from what that Taoist 9-sword said, it seems like there are other quasi-saints from the northern heaven who have come here before. If there are other quasi-saints who come here in the future, the Green Lotus Sword clan might be forcefully taken away by others after losing their clan leader. I need to leave something here. What should I leave behind in order to deter the quasi-saints from the northern heaven? Oh right. I'll just leave this behind. Ning Fan smiled and pointed his finger. The moonlight in the sky immediately gathered and turned into a gigantic moon statue that stood at the bottom of the Soul Spring. It was his own statue. This statue even possessed a trace of divine ability. If others come to invade this place, this statue would certainly warn them. I'll just use my identity as an ancient great cultivator to deter others. If anyone dares to touch this moon recklessly despite my deterrence, don't blame me for being ruthless. Ning Fan gave another order to the Green Lotus Sword clan not to destroy this statue. Then he left. How would the members of the Green Lotus Sword clan dare to destroy this statue? To cultivators who were above the immortal Emperor realm, as long as they had cultivated the descending technique, they could descend through certain ancient statues. The members of the Green Lotus Sword clan only thought that Ning Fan had created this moon statue to keep an eye on them. When they thought about how they would live under Ning Fan's surveillance for the rest of their lives, how would they dare to disobey him? Ning Fan turned into a ray of light and floated towards the outside world. All of a sudden, he stopped in his tracks. It was because there was an item that was slowly sinking in the moonlight water not far away. It was the pouch that the young lady called Fan Xiaoya had lost. Of course, it was impossible for Ning Fan to purposely help the young lady pick up the pouch. However, since he had already encountered it, he just conveniently picked it up. As a result, when he returned to the surface of the water, when he returned the pouch to Fan Xiaoya, countless ladies in the vast cold palace were so touched that they shed tears. Fan Xiaoya even hugged Ning Fan tightly and refused to let him go. She was no longer afraid of the ancient great cultivator getting angry. It seemed like she was not afraid of Ning Fan from the bottom of her heart. Don't be rude. Quickly let go of Senior Zhao. A few ancient cultivators of the vast cold palace had already climbed out of the heaven-avoiding coffin and were waiting for Ning Fan. When they saw Ning Fan being hugged by Fan Xiaoya, they were almost scared to death on the spot. Was an ancient great cultivator someone that ordinary people could simply touch? Just by touching them, they would be tainted by the mortal world. Old monsters who were at the quasi-saint realm and above hated the mortal world the most. This was simply a taboo for criminals. Ah, I'm too excited. Senior, please don't be angry. After Fan Xiaoya regained her senses, she was also shocked. Why did I hug Ning Fan so recklessly? What if Senior gets angry? It's all right. It's just a small matter. By the way, I have a question to ask you. Ning Fan looked at Fan Xiaoya deeply. He thought to himself that this lady was really similar to Si Yingyue, Su Manuel and Lin Qingyue. Senior, please ask. I will certainly tell you everything I know. Fan Xiaoya said with a blushing face. She was so happy that Senior took the initiative to talk to her. Why are you called Xiaoya? Because my mother said that I was born when the morning moon was about to end. She said that the moon was a good intention and it was the best name for me. So Xiaoya means that the morning moon is about to end? Huh? The waxing moon, the full moon, the clear moon and the morning moon have already appeared for 4 months. I wonder how many more moons like this will appear. Ning Fan muttered to himself. His words were destined not to be understood by others. My mother also said that if I fail to become an immortal in the future, there will still be an afterlife. She hopes that I can become a moon in my next life. My mother is very good to me. When I was young, once Fan Xiaoya started talking, she would not stop. She did not care about Ning Fan's noble identity at all. Ning Fan, on the other hand, did not mind it at all. Just like before, he quietly left a mark on Fan Xiaoya's body and finally left. He did not know what these little moon girls represented. He just had a vague feeling that these moon girls seemed to be related to the dead moon at the bottom of the soul spring. Becoming a moon in my next life, huh? In the starry sky, Ning Fan's murmur could be heard from time to time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.